Chapter 1971. Daolin Nation. Daolin Nation's strength was actually at the bottom of the list. However, for so many years, no force had dared to target Daolin Nation. That was because Daolin Nation's royal family was the descendant of Jun Daolin. Although Jun Daolin was no longer in Daolin Nation, he was not dead. Who knew when he would return? Palace. After the morning assembly, Nakayama of Silla walked out. Behind Nakayama of Silla was Gucho. At this moment, Gucho was already in the thoughtless realm. Nakayama of Silla chuckled. Your brother is being hunted. Gucho frowned. By who? Nakayama of Silla said, the enforcement sect in Xianxia. Gucho said in a low voice, Brother Yi is in danger. Although he had not been in Daolin Nation for long, he was still familiar with it. Whether it was the enforcement sect or Xianxia, they were both top forces. Two sects hunting Yi Xian alone? Gucho suddenly said, This brother Yi is really born with hatred. Nakayama of Silla smiled. The treasures on him are too tempting. Gucho looked at Nakayama of Silla. Senior, do you want to get involved? Nakayama of Silla shook his head. My Daolin Nation is small and weak. If not for our ancestors, we would have been devoured by them long ago. So, it's better not to get involved in this kind of thing. Gucho nodded slightly and said nothing more. Nakayama of Silla smiled. Go and cultivate. It won't be long before you reach the thoughtless realm. Gucho nodded and turned to leave. Not long after Gucho left, a phantom suddenly appeared in front of Nakayama of Silla. The phantom lowered his head slightly and said something softly. A moment later, Nakayama of Silla smiled. Hidden Kill Pavilion is also targeting this young Master Yi? The phantom nodded. Yes. Their deputy pavilion master has personally taken action. Nakayama of Silla chuckled and said, Pass down the order. Let the Daolin guards secretly pay attention to young Master Yi. If necessary, save him. The figure hesitated for a moment before he said, Doing that might offend the Hidden Kill Pavilion Xianxia and the Enforcer sect. Nakayama of Silla looked at the shadow in front of him and said with a smile, As a person, one must have a breadth of mind and structure. What you see is a crisis, but what I see is a great opportunity. First, young Master Yi was no ordinary person because the sword in his hand was definitely not something that ordinary people could create. At the very least, one had to be in the inaction realm to be able to create such a sword. In other words, young Master Yi definitely had at least one inaction realm expert behind him. Secondly, how many years has it been since the spiritual mountain accepted anyone? Since Senior Adao Ling accepted Mount Yanbianshan, the spiritual mountain hasn't accepted anyone else. But now young Master Yi is together with Mountain Lord Yan. When he spoke up to hear, he grinned and continued. Mountain Lord Yan definitely obtained Senior Adao Ling's inheritance. However, everyone overlooked something, and that is that young Master Yi entered the secret realm with Mountain Lord Yan, and then they came out together. After they came out, Mountain Lord Yan went into closed-door cultivation, and this young Master Yi actually stood guard for Mountain Lord Yan. Do you know what this means? It means that young Master Yi has definitely joined the spiritual mountain, and he's met Senior Adao Ling. What kind of judgment does someone like Senior Adao Ling have? Can ordinary people catch her eye? And since she's able to acknowledge young Master Yi. As he spoke, he looked up into the sky and chuckled. If we help young Master Yi, not only will young Master Yi owe us a favor, but the spiritual mountain will owe us a favor as well. This is simply killing two birds with one stone. Perfect. The phantom suddenly said, King, we can just sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Let them kill each other and we'll take advantage of it in the end. Nakayama of Silla sighed softly. What you said is not wrong, but you've overlooked one point, and that is that I want to reach the boundless realm. The phantom was stunned. Nakayama of Silla smiled. If we sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight once young Master Yi and the others win, do you think they'll give a damn about me? Who knows, that Mountain Lord Yan might even destroy us if he's unhappy. As he spoke, he slowly closed his eyes. In this battle, young Master Yi will definitely win. The phantom was a little puzzled. Why? Nakayama of Silla smiled. Because he has someone backing him. Fighting with this kind of person, so what if you win against the young ones? Because the old ones will come out immediately and even a few old ones will come out. Besides, don't you think that this young Master Yi's family elders deliberately sent him to the world to train? You can beat him, you can torture him, but you can't beat him to death. If you want to beat him to death, it's definitely the same as poking a hornet's nest. The phantom was speechless. Nakayama of Scylla smiled. You guys go first. I'll get ready. It's time for me to perform. Moreover, I'll have to put on a show for our young Master Yi, to make him feel that it's not easy for us to suddenly help him. We're helping him against a few super forces. Young Master Yi will definitely be touched. The phantom's expression froze. He bowed slightly, then turned and left. Nakayama of Scylla looked at the horizon where a white cloud floated gently. After a while, Nakayama of Scylla suddenly smiled, then walked into the distance. In the middle of a mountain range, Zhou Xian stopped. At this moment he had already used the Xianxia sword to conceal his aura. However, he didn't think that he could rest easy like this. Zhou Xian looked around, then entered Xiao Ta's body. Yan Bianshan sat cross-legged on a mountain peak. His eyes were slightly closed and there was no aura coming from his body. 300 years. Zhou Xian felt a headache when he thought about this, because he knew that Elder Xian of Spiritual Mountain wouldn't be able to hold on for long. In other words, before long not only would he be chased by the law enforcement sect, but he would also be chased by Yunjia. Two super forces. Zhou Xian felt like he was a jinx, being chased wherever he went. Zhou Xian left the pagoda and was just about to leave. However, right at this moment, his pupils constricted abruptly, and the azure sword in his hand vanished. A cold light flashed across his throat. Zhou Xian retreated thousands of feet. After stopping, Zhou Xian squinted his eyes. There was no one in front of him. Moreover, there was a thin layer of armor around his throat. Armor formed by the Xianxia sword. Zhou Xian squinted his eyes. The one who had attacked him was a Daoist realm assassin. Even a Daoist realm assassin had been mobilized. But what puzzled him was how the other party had found him. Zhou Xian said in a low voice, Xiao Ta, can you sense that assassin? Xiao Ta was silent for a moment, then said, No. Zhou Xian frowned slightly. You can't? Are you kidding? You are Destiny's Tower and you can't even sense an assassin? Xiao Ta said calmly, Is there any cause and effect? Zhou Xian was speechless. Xiao Ta continued, Young master, you have to rely on yourself, understand? Zhou Xian's face was full of black lines. Xiao Ta continued, Young master, think about it. Master and Sister Tianming are waiting for you to grow up. But if you continue like this, I don't think they will get to see that day. You don't want to be a second generation for the rest of your life, do you? Zhou Xian said calmly, Can't you sense that assassin? Xiao Ta said angrily, Are you looking down on me? Who am I? I am Destiny's Tower. Zhou Xian asked, Then where is the assassin? Xiao Ta was silent for a moment, then said, In the shadow behind you. Hearing this, Zhou Xian's pupils suddenly shrank. He opened his palm and an air sword suddenly slashed at his shadow. Almost instantly, a cold light slashed at the back of Zhou Xian's neck. Boom. Zhou Xian was sent flying thousands of feet away, and the surrounding forest was instantly turned to dust. When Zhou Xian stopped, the assassin was gone. Zhou Xian said in his heart, Xiao Ta, tell me his location. Xiao Ta said, 10 feet to the right in a tree. Boom. A sword light suddenly pierced that tree, and the moment the tree broke, an afterimage instantly retreated tens of thousands of feet away, then quietly disappeared. Xiao Ta continued, 300,000 feet away in a pool. Zhou Xian opened his palm. The armor on his body suddenly turned into a beam of sword light and slashed into the pool of water. Boom. An afterimage was slashed and retreated repeatedly, and in the place where it was, an arm was left. At this time Xiao Ta said, The opponent ran away. Zhou Xian looked coldly into the distance. He discovered that although the assassin was also in the Daoist realm, the opponent's strength in a head-on confrontation was a bit weak. However, this was normal. After all, the opponent was an assassin and they focused on killing with one blow. But once they faced each other head-on, the opponent completely lost his advantage. At this time Zhou Xian suddenly said, Xiao Ta, can you help me hide my aura? He had previously relied on the green profound sword to hide his aura, but he discovered that someone could still find him. Xiao Ta said, Of course. However, young master, I have to remind you that even if I help to hide your aura, the person just now might still be able to find you. Zhou Xian frowned slightly. Why? Xiao Ta said in a deep voice, Little soul has already completely hidden your aura, but the opponent can still find you. This means that the opponent was able to find you not because of your aura. Zhou Xian was a little curious. Then what is it? Xiao Ta said, "Young master, you have to remember I'm just a tower. Why do you always ask a tower so many questions?" Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. Damn, once this guy encountered a question that he didn't know, he would remember that he was a tower. Yi Xian asked again, "Xiao Ta, remember to notify me at any time once the opponent comes near." Xiao Ta hesitated for a moment and then he said, "Young master, don't you want to experience the excitement and pleasure of being between life and death? Think about it, being able to react in that extreme instant and kill the opponent. Isn't that very satisfying?" Yi Xian fell silent. Xiao Ta continued, "If I notify you, then it'll be very difficult for you to improve. But if you can rely on your own strength to kill the opponent, then it'll be completely different." Yi Xian fell silent for a moment and then he said, "What you said isn't without reason." Xiao Ta nodded, "I want to experience the feeling of being pursued." Yi Xian smiled, "It's not impossible." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. "Brother, stop hiding. I saw you a long time ago." As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished. Not long after Yi Xian disappeared, a man in black suddenly appeared at the place where Yi Xian was originally standing. The man in black looked at Yi Xian, who disappeared in the distance, and said softly, "What the hell? Is he trying to scare me? P.S. You gave me monthly tickets. When I become a god, I'll definitely repay you with 100 chapters." Chapter 1972. Yi Xian went straight to the law enforcement sect. To him, the most dangerous place was the safest place. He quietly snuck into the law enforcement sect. Currently, all the top experts in the law enforcement sect had left. There was not a single Daoist realm cultivator in the entire sect. He did not kill anyone from the law enforcement sect. There was no point in killing these small fries. On the contrary, he would expose himself. To him, every bit of time was precious. In the dark, Yi Xian scanned his surroundings. Finally, he came to a small building. This small building was rather remote and had been abandoned for a long time. There were cobwebs everywhere. Yi Xian came to the top floor and looked around. There were some moldy ancient books placed around him. They were all worthless books. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and entered Xiao Ta. He slowly closed his eyes. Cultivation. Dao Ling had given him an inheritance. Just as Dao Ling had said, with the help of this inheritance he could indeed save a lot of time when cultivating. In that inheritance, Dao Ling had already explained this realm in great detail, even including her previous cultivation experiences. This was too much of a help to Yi Xian. Yi Xian began to charge towards the Heartless realm. His biggest shortcoming now was that his realm was too low. Once his realm caught up, it was not impossible for him to kill a Daoist realm cultivator. Just like that, time passed bit by bit. Outside the law enforcement sect, the assassin hiding in the dark was at a loss. He wanted to attack, but he was also a little afraid of Yi Xian because Yi Xian seemed to be able to know his location. And if he faced Yi Xian head-on, he would definitely not be able to kill Yi Xian. In a head-on battle, his strength would be greatly reduced. Most importantly, he did not dare to approach Yi Xian now. He had actually given up on killing Yi Xian because he knew that he could not kill him. What he needed to do now was to follow Yi Xian and know Yi Xian's whereabouts at any time. Yi Xian's concealment technique was also somewhat unique. If one didn't follow him from time to time, it would be very easy to lose him. However, he was slightly puzzled as to why this fellow had come to the law enforcement sect. Inside Xiao. Heartless state. To put it simply, he was at ease. It was the same concept as his sword Dao. Of course, it sounded simple, but it was still difficult to reach this realm. If the heart was bound, it would be difficult to be free. What he wanted to achieve was to let his heart be free from any shackles. This process was very difficult and it required the support of countless resources. Previously, when he was trying to break through to the life-knowing realm, he felt that it took too much energy. But compared to now, he felt that it was child's play. This was because he needed to consume at least 1,000,000 Supreme Saint crystals every day. If it were not for the resources of the King of Snow Mountain, Aldergu, and the others, he would not have been able to break through to the Heartless realm. Apart from himself, he also gave Dao Ling's inheritance to Su Wang and let Su Wang break through to the Heartless state. He wanted to nurture a super expert. This was his disciple. He had to be careful. Just like that, 10 years passed. As he sat cross-legged on the ground, the aura around Yi Xian grew stronger and stronger. Outside, the black-robed assassin who was hiding in the shadows suddenly turned around, and a black-robed man had suddenly appeared before him. The black-robed man bowed slightly to the black-robed man. Greetings, Pavilion Master. The black-robed man before him was the Pavilion Master of the Hidden Killer Pavilion. The Pavilion Master glanced at the law enforcement sect in the distance and said hoarsely, "He's inside." The black-robed man nodded. "He's inside." As he spoke, he hesitated for a moment and said, "There's something strange about him. Because he seems to be able to see me." The Pavilion Master fell silent for a moment before he said, "Leave this matter to me. You can leave. Remember, besides me, don't let anyone know of his whereabouts." The black-robed man bowed slightly and vanished silently. The Pavilion Master gazed into the distant pavilion, and then he vanished silently after a moment of silence. He didn't attack Xian either. On the other side, Xiao and Zhou Xian's expressions were extremely unsightly somewhere high up in the clouds. Because they'd searched for an entire day and night yet hadn't found any information about Xian. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian suddenly said, "Is there any news from the Hidden Killer Pavilion?" Xiao shook her head. "There's no reply from them." Zhou Xian frowned slightly when he heard this. "Even they aren't able to find him?" Xiao fell silent. Zhou Xian gazed at Xiao. "Is there a problem?" Xiao spoke indifferently. "Do you think the Hidden Killer Pavilion killed Xian and Yan Bianshan in secret and seized the inheritance?" Zhou Xian's expression instantly became unsightly when he heard this. That wasn't impossible. At this moment Xiao said, "No matter what, we can't place all our hopes on the Hidden Killer Pavilion. We have to think of another way to find Xian." Zhou Xian looked at Xiao. "Do you have any good ideas?" After a moment of silence, Xiao said, "Where do you think Xian is hiding now?" Zhou Xian frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Xiao said softly, "If I were Xian, then the most dangerous place for me right now might be the safest place." Hearing this, Zhou Xian's pupils suddenly shrank. In reply to Yunjia, Xiao stopped Zhou Xian. "Go to my enforcer sect." Zhou Xian was puzzled. "Why?" Xiao sneered. "Because my enforcer sect has the deepest hatred for him." With that he waved his hand. "Let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, he led the powerhouses of the enforcer sect and vanished on the spot. After Xiao and the others left, Nakayama of Silla appeared. He looked in the direction that Xiao and the others had left and frowned deeply. After a moment, Nakayama of Silla said, "Let the Daolin guards and the Imperial guards head to the enforcer sect at the fastest speed." With that he vanished on the spot. At the enforcer sect, Xian, who was cultivating, suddenly opened his eyes and was about to get up. Meanwhile, Nakayama of Silla's voice resounded in Xian's mind. "Young Master Yi, focus on your breakthrough. I'll block the enforcer sect and Yunjia for you. However, I can only block them for an hour." An hour had passed in the outside world. Xian said in a deep voice, "Thank you, Senior." Nakayama of Silla smiled. "You're too kind." Xian didn't have the time to think about why Nakayama of Silla would help him because he was at the critical moment of charging into the undistracted state. He needed some time. Within the enforcer sect, Xiao glanced at the surroundings, and then his gaze descended onto a pavilion in the surroundings. "Found it." As soon as he finished speaking, he spread open his right hand, and then he suddenly grabbed at the pavilion. A powerful force swept down from the sky. Right when the force was about to strike the pavilion, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared before the pavilion, and then he smashed his fist forward. Bang! The entire expanse of space warped. Xiao and Zhou Xian's expressions turned unsightly when they saw the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was Nakayama of Silla from the Daolin Kingdom. Xiao gazed at Nakayama of Silla. "Nakayama of Silla, we've always lived in harmony with the Daolin Kingdom. What's the meaning of this?" Nakayama of Silla smiled. "Sect leader Xiao, I'm protecting this young Master Yi." Xiao gazed at Nakayama of Silla and then he smiled and said, "I understand. Nakayama of Silla has chosen a different path from us. However, our objectives are the same." Nakayama of Silla smiled. "Yes." Xiao turned to look at Zhou Xian. "I'll hold him back." Zhou Xian nodded. "All right." Xiao looked at Nakayama of Silla and was about to make a move. At this moment Nakayama of Silla suddenly said, "Sect leader Xiao, can you listen to me?" Xiao was expressionless. What does Nakayama of Silla want to say? Nakayama of Silla smiled. "Sect leader Xiao, Aren't you afraid that Mountain Chieftain Yen will summon her ancestor? Xiao was expressionless. I bet that she can't summon her ancestor. Nakayama of Silla wanted to say something, but Xiao suddenly slammed his palm down, and a powerful force swept down from the sky. Nakayama of Silla narrowed his eyes, and then he disappeared on the spot. Bang! In the sky above the law enforcement sect, a powerful force suddenly spread out. In the next moment, Nakayama of Silla and Xiao both entered another spacetime. Neither of them dared to recklessly destroy this spacetime. The nomological laws left behind by Jun Daolin were no joke. After Nakayama of Silla and Xiao entered another spacetime, Zhou Xian looked at the pavilion below. In the next moment he directly rushed towards the pavilion. Just as he arrived in front of the pavilion, his pupils suddenly shrank and he suddenly turned around. Swoosh! Zhou Xian retreated thousands of feet away, but one of his arms was forever left in the same place. After Zhou Xian stopped, he looked at the part where his arm had been cut off and there was no one there. Zhou Xian's expression became extremely ugly. Hidden Killer Pavilion Master. I didn't expect you to betray us as well. There was no response. Zhou Xian's expression became ferocious. Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, the experts from the law enforcement sect and Yunjie's side charged towards the pavilion below. Suddenly, over 10 black figures appeared in the surroundings. Assassins. Apart from that, there were also more than 30 experts in golden armor who appeared in the pavilion. The Daolin Guard. The middle-aged man who led the group gazed at the experts that charged down with an emotionless expression. Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, the experts behind him charged forward in unison. The battle had begun. Yunjie's side and the enforcement sect's side had quite a large number of experts, but they were unable to do anything to the Hidden Killer Pavilion and Daolin Kingdom for now. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian suddenly looked towards the distant space-time. Sect Master Xiao, activate the formation. Activate the formation. Nakayama of Silla, who was fighting Xiao, frowned when he heard this, and a trace of uneasiness arose in his heart. This was the enforcement sect. Suddenly Xiao said, activate the grand formation. As soon as he finished speaking, numerous grand formations within the enforcement sect were activated, and then countless powerful forces smashed towards the experts from the Daolin Kingdom. The experts' expressions instantly changed drastically. They were already at a disadvantage, so how could they resist the grand formations? Meanwhile, 3 Daolin realm experts from the enforcement sect suddenly charged towards the pavilion. Their true targets were Yi Xian and Yan Puanshan. To be more precise, it was Yan Puanshan. Once Yan Puanshan attained the inaction realm, then they could just slit their own throats. The inaction realm. It was absolutely not something that Daolin realm experts could resist. Chapter 1973. He had to kill Yan Peishan. The experts from the enforcement sect and Yunjia charged madly towards the pavilion. However, the experts from the Hidden Kill Pavilion and the Kingdom of Lindao had been stopped, and they couldn't provide assistance at all. Meanwhile, a woman suddenly appeared in the pavilion. It was none other than Xiwang. There wasn't a shred of fear in Xiwang's eyes as she gazed at the experts that were charging at her. She'd given up on charging into the Heartless Realm, because Yi Xian needed help at this moment. She knew that her current strength wasn't enough to stop them at all. Their cultivations were much higher than hers. But she'd still come out. Xiwang slowly closed her eyes as she gazed at the experts that were charging at her. Actually, she knew that she would definitely die. But she didn't regret her choice. Right at this moment, she suddenly opened her eyes and opened her palm. The green profound sword appeared in her hand, and in the next moment she suddenly stabbed forward. Life and death were decided by drawing the sword. A sword strike with all her strength. A sword howl instantly shook the sky as she stabbed forward. It was a very powerful attack. Unfortunately, her opponent was a Daoist realm expert. The Daoist realm expert in the lead slammed his fist against the green profound sword, and the powerful force caused the sword to tremble violently. After that, the sword was blasted flying. At the same time, Xiwang's right arm was shattered into pieces, and then she was blasted flying. When she finally stopped moving, her body had shattered and only her soul remained. The Daoist realm experts didn't pay any attention to Xiwang because her soul was vanishing at an extremely swift speed. Vanishing completely was only a matter of time. Suddenly, the green profound sword trembled violently, and then it transformed into a ray of light that shot into Shuang's soul that was about to vanish. Bang! The green profound sword protected Shuang's soul. Meanwhile, the pavilion suddenly transformed into nothingness and then a man walked out. It was none other than Zhou Xian. As soon as Zhou Xian appeared, a Daoist realm expert appeared above him, and then he smashed his fist down. They knew that Zhou Xian could ignore many aspects of space, so they didn't utilize the energy of space to deal with Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian stared at the incoming fist, his face expressionless. When the fist arrived in front of him, the space around him suddenly became illusory. Mysterious spacetime. Zhou Xian stomped his right foot. Boom. A powerful spacetime pressure suddenly enveloped the Daoist realm expert. The Daoist realm expert's face instantly changed, but he didn't retract his fist. He still punched at Zhou Xian's face. He'd already sensed that the spacetime energy couldn't kill him at all, and this punch of his was sufficient to kill Zhou Xian. Exchanging injuries for lives. This deal was worth it. Zhou Xian narrowed his eyes. At that moment he did not have the Xianxia sword and he did not dare to put it away. Once he did, the fabricated sword would disappear completely. Without the green profound sword, how was he supposed to fend off a Daoist? When he thought of this, Zhou Xian's expression suddenly turned ferocious. Without the Xianxia sword, would he be useless? He took a step forward, and in an instant, countless sword lights engulfed him and the Daoist realm expert. Core sword domain. Once again he used this sword technique that he thought was a little outdated. When he used this sword technique, there was only one thought in his mind. I'm a swordsman. Even without the Xianxia sword, I'm still a swordsman. However, reality was cruel. Boom. The sword lights shattered and Zhou Xian was blasted thousands of meters away. The Daoist realm expert was dumbfounded. He looked at his fist and then at Zhou Xian in the distance. From the way you appeared just now, I thought you were an expert, but I didn't expect. As he spoke, a flying sword suddenly slashed at him. The Daoist realm expert's lips curled into a disdainful smile and he flicked his sleeve. Boom. The flying sword was blasted into pieces. In the distance, Zhou Xian's face fell at the sight of that. Even though he'd attained the Heartless realm, there was still quite a huge gap between him and the Daoist realm. Meanwhile, the Daoist realm expert suddenly clenched his fist at Zhou Xian from afar, and the space around Zhou Xian was instantly obliterated. A ferocious expression flashed through Zhou Xian's eyes, and he charged forward instead of retreating. He transformed into a ray of light that shot forward. A sharp sound of something tearing apart resounded. The Daoist realm expert raised his arm to block the attack. Bang! The ray of light shattered. At the same time he smashed his left fist forward. Bang! The space before him sunk down and then Zhou Xian was instantly blasted flying. However, the Daoist realm expert fell into a dark spatial abyss at the instant he was blasted flying. A mysterious spatial abyss. The Daoist realm expert frowned as soon as he fell into the boundless abyss. At this moment Xiao suddenly roared in anger. What are you waiting for? Are you watching the show? It turned out that there were a few dozen extraordinary experts in front of Zhou Xian, and there were 6 Daoist realm experts amongst them. However, when Zhou Xian was fighting with that Daoist realm powerhouse, these people did not make a move. The reason they hadn't chosen to attack was because they felt that it was quite unkind of them to interfere in a battle between 2 Daoist realm experts. But at this moment they instantly returned to their senses when they heard Xiao. Without any hesitation, everyone dashed toward Zhou Xian, who was not far away. The 6 Daoist realm experts in the lead even used their full strength. Obviously they intended to kill Zhou Xian with a single strike. Zhou Xian's eyelids twitched when he saw so many charging at him, and he hurriedly roared with fury. Big sister, you can just wait to bury me if you still don't show yourself. Hehe. Meanwhile, laughter resounded abruptly and then a ray of light flashed. The others hadn't even recovered from their shock when the head of the Daoist realm expert in the lead of the group that was charging at Zhou Xian flew into the air and transformed into nothingness. It was an instant kill. Everyone was shocked. All the experts who were charging at Zhou Xian retreated explosively. Meanwhile, Yang Yanxue appeared in front of Zhou Xian, and she grinned as she gazed at Zhou Xian. How did you know that I would show myself? Zhou Xian heaved a sigh of relief in his heart and then he said, we're siblings by blood. Yang Yanxue roared with laughter. Dad, I'll protect you. As she spoke, she opened her palm and a strand of light appeared there. She gazed at the group of experts in the distance and smiled. All of you come over here. The expressions of those Daoist realm experts became extremely solemn when they heard this. Did she just instantly kill a Daoist realm expert? Everyone turned to look at Zhou Xian, who'd recovered his arm. Zhou Xian gazed at Xianxia. Who are you? Xianxia pointed at Yi Xian and smiled. I'm his older sister. Zhou Xian frowned slightly. Big sister? Xianxia nodded and smiled. Hi, real sister. A wisp of fear flashed through Zhou Xian's eyes as he glanced at the ray of light in Xianxia's hand. He was quite fearful of that ray of light. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, Big sister, kill him. Xianxia rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. Dad always told me that I must win others over with virtue when I'm outside. Yi Xian was flabbergasted. Win others over with virtue? Is that father's style? Yi Xian walked over to Xianxia's side and spoke via voice transmission. Big sister, how many rays of light did father leave for you? Xianxia spoke softly. 3. I've already used 2. This is the last one. Yi Xian's face instantly fell when he heard this. Is this a game? There are at least a dozen Daoist realm experts on the other side. How? Meanwhile, Xianxia said, Don't worry, they don't know that I only have a single ray of light left. Yi Xian glanced at Xianxia and then he gazed at Zhou Xian and smiled. Did you see that Daoist realm expert from before? He wasn't even able to stop a ray of light our father left behind. If our father came here himself. The expressions of Zhou Xian and the others turned unsightly when they heard this. It was an instant kill. Merely a single ray of light had instantly killed a Daoist realm expert. Is he really in Daoist realm expert? Only in Daoist realm expert can accomplish this. This fellow has an Daoist realm expert behind him. When they thought up to this point, the expressions of Zhou Xian and the others turned even more unsightly. An Daoist realm expert. For a time no one dared to move. Meanwhile, Xiao and Nakayama of Silla stopped as well. Nakayama of Silla came to Yi Xian's side. His face was extremely pale as if he'd suffered some sort of severe internal injury. Yi Xian looked at Nakayama of Silla with slight worry in his eyes. Senior, are you all right? Nakayama of Silla suddenly covered his mouth and coughed forcefully a few times. After that he opened his palm and within it was a pool of blood. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed. Nakayama of Silla smiled bitterly. It's a small matter. A small matter. As he spoke he started coughing violently again. Yi Xian hurried to say, Sir, take a good rest. Leave the rest to us. Nakayama of Silla's heart relaxed. Damn it, I've been waiting for you to say that. If they continue fighting they'll really be risking their lives. At this moment Nakayama of Silla seemed to have thought of something. He looked at a man in golden armor beside him. The man's expression was dejected. High King, we've lost 12 brothers. What? Nakayama of Silla suddenly burst into tears. Everyone was slightly stunned and they all looked at Nakayama of Silla. Nakayama of Silla mumbled as if he'd lost his soul. I don't know whose sons they are. I don't know whose parents they are. I've let all of you down. As he spoke he immediately burst into tears. Seeing this, Yi Xian felt even more guilty. Yi Xian walked in front of Nakayama of Silla and said guiltily, Senior. Nakayama of Silla suddenly pulled Yi Xian back. He shook his head and said painfully, No, it's not your fault. It's really not your fault. Don't feel guilty. Please don't feel guilty. Yi Xian. Everyone looked at Nakayama of Silla with strange expressions. Seeing Nakayama of Silla in so much pain, Yi Xian felt even more guilty. At this moment Xiao mocked, Nakayama of Silla, what are you putting on a show? Didn't you come here for the sake of Dao Ling's inheritance? Bullsh *T. Nakayama of Silla suddenly pointed at Xiao and cursed. Do you think everyone is as greedy as you? Do you think I came to stop you for the inheritance? No. I did it for the future of the entire Dao critical realm. I did it for justice. Justice will prevail. Everyone. P.S. Asking for votes. Chapter 1974. Justice. Xiao Zhao's expression instantly became extremely unsightly when he heard Nakayama of Silla. Is he an idiot? He's even doing it for justice. He's really upright. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian walked over to Xiao Zhao's side, and then he hesitated for a moment before he said, We have to think of a way to deal with that woman. Xiao restrained his thoughts and gazed at Xianxia. A wisp of fear flashed through his eyes when he saw the ray of light in Yang Yanxua's hand. He'd instantly killed a Daoist realm expert. The owner of that ray of light was definitely an inaction realm expert. When he thought up to this point, Xiao Zhao's expression instantly grew even more unsightly. Presently there were only two paths before them. The first was to continue killing. Kill Yi Xian and Yan Bianshan, and then obtain the inheritance. However, the risk of doing so was extremely high, because a true inaction realm expert might appear. The second path was to surrender. Was it too late to surrender now? Perhaps it was. However, he didn't want to surrender. Instead of living in humiliation, it was better to die a glorious death. When he thought up to here, Xiao Xiao slowly closed his eyes. Activate the formation. Bang! A ray of white light suddenly shot into the sky from within the enforcement sect. When it shot into the sky, it suddenly transformed into a strange white vortex, and then a huge sword emerged slowly from within it. As soon as the huge sword appeared, space actually started to tremble violently. This expansive space couldn't endure the sword's strength at all. Meanwhile, Nakayama of Scylla's expression had become extremely solemn. The seamless sword formation. Yang Yanxua gazed at Nakayama of Scylla. The seamless sword formation? Nakayama of Scylla spoke solemnly. It's an ancient sword formation that was created by a sect master of the enforcement sect all those years ago. That sect master was at the quasi-inaction realm all those years ago. He used a few hundreds of years to create this formation, and every single sect master of the enforcement sect has maintained it with great care. So it's growing stronger and stronger. Now it can definitely kill a quasi-inaction realm expert with ease. The seamless sword formation. Hearing this, Yang Yanxua frowned. She only had a wisp of sword light. If she used it to break this formation, what would happen next? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stepped forward. Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian pulled Yang Yanxua behind him and said seriously, "Big sister, let me carry it." Yang Yanxua frowned. "You?" Yi Xian said seriously, "Of course I'll be the one to do such a dangerous thing." Yang Yanxua pulled Yi Xian to her side and sent him a sound transmission with profound qi. "Don't think that I don't know that you can absorb sword qi." Yi Xian was speechless. At that moment, countless tiny sword qi suddenly appeared around the huge sword. These sword qi were like needles densely packed, and it was a daunting sight to behold. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao suddenly spoke fiercely, "Yi Xian, even the gods can't save you today." As soon as he finished speaking, his right hand suddenly fell. Bang! In the sky, the huge sword carried countless strands of sword qi as it shot down violently. In an instant, the entire sky dimmed down. The expressions of Nakayama of Scylla and the others changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. Suddenly Yi Xian roared, "I'll do it." As soon as he finished speaking, he shot into the sky and charged towards the huge sword. Everyone was slightly stunned. What does Yi Xian intend to do? Xiao Xiao frowned slightly, and a strand of uneasiness arose in his heart. At this moment, Yi Xian collided head-on with the giant sword. Bang! The spectators watched as the huge sword actually pierced into Yi Xian's body. In an instant, a powerful aura swept out from within him. At the same time, the countless strands of sword qi in the sky entered his body under his guidance. Bang! A powerful aura erupted from within Yi Xian, and it wasn't the aura of the Heartless Realm any longer. Xiao Xiao and the others were completely stunned when they witnessed this scene. What's going on? It wasn't just Xiao Xiao and the others, even Nakayama of Scylla was shocked. This fellow actually absorbed all those swords. Absorbed them? At this moment, Yi Xian, who was in the sky, suddenly took a deep breath and shouted, "Awesome!" Needless to say, he felt really good at this moment because those strands of sword qi had increased his cultivation by too much. Everyone was speechless. Xiao Xiao stared fixedly at Yi Xian, and his face was as red as a pig's liver. Not only can this fellow ignore space and time, but he can even absorb swords. What sort of god is he? Meanwhile, Yi Xian clenched his right fist slowly, and the powerful aura in the surroundings instantly surged back into his body like tide water. A trace of disappointment flashed in his eyes. Almost. Just a little bit more and I'll be able to attain the thoughtless realm. My cultivation is sufficient. However, I still need to comprehend it. In my opinion, so long as I'm given another day, then I'll be able to attain the thoughtless realm. Of course, it's absolutely impossible for Qin Shi to give me that much time. Meanwhile, Xiao Xiao suddenly opened his palm. In the next moment, a command token suddenly shot into the sky. Bang! The entire sky transformed into a huge vortex, and then an illusory middle-aged man walked out from within it. Ancestor summon. Nakayama of Scylla's face fell once more when he witnessed this scene, and he walked over to Yi Xian's side. Young Master Yi, that's the ancestor of the enforcement sect, Nianji. He attained the half-step inactivity realm all those years ago, and he wasn't just an ordinary half-step inactivity realm expert. Even though only a strand of his soul remains now, his strength far surpasses an ordinary Daoist realm expert. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Senior, can you defeat him?" Nakayama of Scylla hurriedly shook his head. "No. I'm no match for him." Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, Nianji suddenly spoke softly, "Is my enforcement sect in danger of being destroyed?" Xiao bowed respectfully. "Martial ancestor." The experts of the enforcement sect bowed as well. "Greetings, martial ancestor." Nianji suddenly gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched and he moved back to stand by Yang Nianshua's side. It was best to be careful when facing an expert at the level of an old monster. Nianji gazed at Yi Xian for a short while, and then he said, "Why have you come to destroy my enforcement sect?" Yi Xian spoke indifferently, "Senior, I'm not the one who wants to destroy your enforcement sect, it's your enforcement sect that wants to take my sword." As he spoke, he gazed at Shuang. At this moment, Shuang's soul had recovered, and he issued a command in his heart, causing the green profound sword to fly over to Nianji. "It's this sword." Nianji gazed at the green profound sword. He'd intended to take it, but for some unknown reason he didn't grasp it. A short while later, Nianji turned to look at Xiao. "Is there something wrong with your head?" Xiao was taken aback. "Martial ancestor." Nianji frowned slightly. "Can't you feel the terror of this sword?" Xiao said in a deep voice, "It's just a sword." Nianji looked at Xiao. "How did you reach the Daoist realm?" Xiao's expression was a little ugly. Nianji sighed softly. "Logically speaking, life knower realm should be able to feel the terrifying karma of this sword. But you still can't feel it after reaching the Daoist realm. Or rather, you've already felt it, but it's still because of greed." Xiao said in a deep voice, "Does the martial ancestor know who he is?" Nianji shook his head. "He's not someone we can afford to offend." Xiao clenched his fists and his expression was extremely gloomy. As soon as Nianji said this, the expressions of the enforcement sect's experts turned ugly. Even their martial ancestor said they couldn't offend him? What else could they do? Nianji suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "Little friend, where is the person who made this sword? Is she at the Daoist realm?" Yi Xian smiled. "I don't know where she is. As for whether she's at the Daoist realm, I don't know either." Nianji fell silent for a moment before he said, "Little friend, how about this? Let's shake hands and make peace." Shake hands and make peace. Yi Xian was stunned. He didn't expect that the old man would actually propose to shake hands and make peace. Meanwhile, Xiao suddenly roared furiously, "No." As soon as he said this, everyone looked at Xiao. Nakayama of Scylla, who led the group, sneered, "Sect Master Xiao, you're really amazing. Are you going to betray your martial ancestor?" Nianji looked at Xiao and Xiao said in a deep voice, "Martial ancestor, the enforcement sect and I are absolutely irreconcilable with this person. If we don't eliminate him today, then once he's allowed to grow, our enforcement sect will be in danger." Nianji looked at Xiao. "Do you think you can kill him?" Xiao's expression gradually turned ferocious. "Why not? My enforcement sect hasn't utilized any trump cards, so it isn't difficult to kill him." As he spoke, he bowed deeply. "Martial ancestor, it wasn't easy for our enforcement sect to develop until now. It's even more difficult for us to cultivate until now. If we eliminate Yi Xian and Yan Bianshan today, then the Daoist realm experts of our enforcement sect might be able to truly attain the inaction realm. At that time, our enforcement sect will become the strongest power in the entire Dao descent world." The inaction realm. The Daoist realm experts of the enforcement sect were instantly tempted when they heard Xiao. After all, Yi Xian and Yan Bianshan definitely possessed a Dao Ling's inheritance. If they killed Yi Xian, then they would be able to stop Yan Bianshan from attaining the inaction realm. Moreover, they would be able to seize Yan Bianshan's inheritance. Once they obtained Yan Bianshan's inheritance, then they would have a chance to attain the inaction realm of legend. Meanwhile, Nianji sighed softly. "You're dreaming. Do you know that the knowledge contained within this sword has exceeded the scope of our universe? In other words, the person who created this sword was at least an inaction realm expert, and only Jun Daolin had attained the inaction realm in our universe. However, he probably wasn't the one who created this sword. Do you know what this means? It means that there's an unknown world and an unknown extraordinary expert in our universe. Nakayama of Silla, who stood by Yi Xian's side, gave him a thumbs up, as expected of our ancestor. Your intelligence really isn't ordinary. I'm impressed. Xiao remained silent with a gloomy expression, and no one knew what he was thinking. Meanwhile, Nianji continued, it's normal for people to be greedy. However, don't let greed blind your mind. Some people can be enemies with others and some absolutely can't be enemies with. This is the way of survival. Do you understand? Xiao gazed at Nianji. I finally understand why the founding ancestor was stuck at the half-step inaction realm all his life. Because the founding ancestor was too overcautious in everything he did. How could he accomplish great things if he was so overcautious? As he spoke, he pointed angrily towards the sky. I, Xiao, don't believe in fate. Besides myself, I don't believe in anyone. My fate is up to me, not the heavens. Nianji's expression froze. Chapter 1975. My fate is up to me, not the heavens. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they heard this. Yi Xian's face was covered in astonishment as well. That fellow has a temper. Nakayama of Silla shook his head as well. Amazing. Nianji sighed softly with a complicated expression on his face. He didn't know what to say when he encountered such a disciple of the later generations. Suddenly Xiao spoke coldly, farewell ancestor. As he spoke, he opened his palm and a pitch-black command token appeared there. In the next moment, Nianji's soul gradually became ethereal. He was going to put away the obsession soul. Nianji glanced at the experts of the enforcement sect. What's your choice? All the experts of the enforcement sect fell silent. Xiao's face was emotionless. Martial ancestor, we want to give it a try. Nianji nodded lightly. I understand. As he spoke, his figure gradually became ethereal. Meanwhile, Nakayama of Silla suddenly said, Senior, you can kill Xiao. In that way you'll be able to save your enforcement sect. Xiao glanced coldly at Nakayama of Silla while the killing intent in his eyes seemed material. Nianji shook his head and smiled. I've already perished, so it doesn't matter to me whether the enforcement sect exists or not. Nakayama of Silla spoke in a low voice. Are you just going to watch as they court death? Nianji smiled. That's their choice. As soon as he finished speaking, his soul vanished like smoke. He'd vanished completely. He didn't choose to return to the command token and protect the enforcement sect. Because he knew the outcome. Moreover, he was utterly unable to change anything. Even though he was the ancestor of the enforcement sect, this wasn't his era anymore. After all, a new emperor brought his own ministers. So he chose to leave in peace. After Nianji left, Nakayama of Silla, who stood by Yi Xian's side, suddenly said, Young brother Yi, should we retreat? Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he asked, Do we have a chance at victory? Nakayama of Silla transmitted his voice using profound energy. Is there only one sword light in your sister's hand? Yi Xian looked at Nakayama of Silla. How did you know? Nakayama of Silla said in a low voice. If she had many Daoists, would she still be standing here watching Xiao act tough? Yi Xian was speechless. Nakayama of Silla said solemnly, Let's retreat to Daolin Nation. Yi Xian nodded. I'll listen to Senior. The corners of Nakayama of Silla's mouth twitched. He waved his right hand. Retreat. Retreat. With that, the group of people turned around and fled. Meanwhile, a wisp of a ferocious expression flashed through Xiao's eyes. You want to retreat? With that, he waved his hand. Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, the experts from the law enforcement sect and the experts from Yunjia rushed out. At this moment, many assassins suddenly appeared in the surroundings. The hidden killer's pavilion brought up the rear. Xiao opened his palm and 9 black wooden tablets suddenly floated out. In the next moment, the 9 wooden tablets suddenly exploded, and 9 mysterious people wrapped in black cloths appeared. As soon as the 9 mysterious people appeared, Nakayama of Silla's expression changed drastically. Corpse generals. The law enforcement sect actually refined corpse generals. Yi Xian was slightly curious. Senior, what are corpse generals? Nakayama of Silla said in a low voice. Many years ago there was a superpower in Daolin Nation called the Corpse God Sect. This sect is extremely skilled in refining corpses. As he spoke, he turned around and glanced at the surroundings. These corpse generals are at least Daoist realm experts. After being refined using a special secret technique, these corpse generals become even more terrifying. Back then, the Corpse God Sect refined a large number of corpse generals. At their peak, they had over 1,000 corpse generals. Later on, when my Daolin Nation's ancestor emerged from his closed-door cultivation, he annihilated them. Because the method of refining corpse generals is extremely cruel. For example, the souls of these corpse generals that you see now actually still exist. However, their souls are imprisoned within their corpses. Moreover, they're being controlled by the person who refined them. Xian was about to speak when 6 corpse generals appeared before the 3 of them. Xian noticed that these 3 corpse generals had stopped all the assassins from the Hidden Killer's Pavilion. Even the pavilion master of the Hidden Killer's Pavilion had been stopped. Xian gazed at Nakayama of Silla. Senior, how many are you fighting? Nakayama of Silla raised a finger. Xian hurriedly said, all of them? All right. Nakayama of Silla was dumbfounded. Do you not know how to count? I'll say 1. Xian's face darkened. Senior, your cultivation level is so much higher than mine. Aren't you embarrassed to fight 1? Nakayama of Silla nodded. Of course I am. Xian's expression froze. At this moment, Xiao and Zhou Xian appeared before Xian's group of 3. Xiao glanced at Yang Yanxue, who was hiding behind Xian. He had not forgotten the sword gleam in Yang Yanshua's hand. Xiao said solemnly, Miss, if you're willing to leave, we won't stop you. Yang Yanshua's eyes lit up. Really? Nakayama of Silla and Xian turned to look at Yang Yanxua. Both of their faces were filled with astonishment. Yang Yanxua said seriously, I'm just asking. I don't mean anything else. Xian and Nakayama of Silla exchanged glances. Both of them were slightly flustered. Nakayama of Silla said softly, Are you sure she's your biological sister? Xian fell silent for a moment before he said, Most of the time I'm not so sure. Nakayama of Silla was speechless. Meanwhile, Xiao said, Miss, if I'm not wrong, there's only 1 sword gleam left in your hand. Am I right? Yang Yanxue remained silent. Xiao continued, That sword gleam of yours is really powerful. We can't stop it. However, you can only kill 1 person, right? Yang Yanshua's lips curled up slightly. Then I'll kill you. As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her palm and a ray of sword gleams suddenly flew out. The ray of sword gleam's target was Xiao. Xiao's expression changed drastically. At this moment he smelled the scent of death. If he were to stop that ray of sword gleam, he would definitely not be able to. Of course he wouldn't do it himself. A corpse general appeared in front of Xiao, and then it smashed its fist forward. It was a head-on attack. Everyone watched as the corpse general was obliterated. Meanwhile, Xiao had fled over 30 kilometers away. A trace of fear appeared in Xiao's eyes for the first time when he saw the terrifying corpse general being obliterated just like that. He knew very well how terrifying the corpse general was. It could be said that even he couldn't do anything to it, because the corpse general's body was at the half-step inactivity realm. However, such a terrifying body had been slashed into pieces like tofu by that ray of sword gleam. That ray of sword gleam was actually so terrifying. A trace of fear arose in Xiao's heart, but it didn't take long for him to suppress it. At this moment he had no way out. Xiao raised his head and looked towards the distance. A moment later he was stunned. That woman was gone. It wasn't just Xiao, Xian and Nakayama of Silla were stunned as well. Yang Yanxue had fled right after she shot that ray of sword gleam. She's fled. Xian was quite stunned. That's his own sister. He fled just like that. Blood is thicker than water. Meanwhile, Xiao gazed at Nakayama of Silla and he spoke fiercely, Kill him first. As soon as he finished speaking, 3 corpse generals charged at Nakayama of Silla. Nakayama of Silla's expression changed drastically. Are you fucking mad? Xiao stared fixedly at Nakayama of Silla. I've fucking hated the sight of you for a very long time. Compared to Xian, he actually hated Nakayama of Silla even more. He felt that it was normal for Xian to be shameless. After all, Yixian's strength was low and he was like a child. So, it was understandable for him to be shameless. But who was Nakayama of Silla? He was at the Daoist realm. However, he was so shameless and always spoke sarcastic words. He hated it. Xiao Xiao attacked Nakayama of Silla first. Meanwhile, Yixian heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. But it didn't take long for his expression to turn gloomy. Because there were two corpse generals in front of him. Moreover, Zhou and Xiao Xiao were staring at him. Their main target was still him. Yixian glanced at Yan Bianshan, who was in Xiaota. At this moment, Yan Bianshan was like an old monk in meditation and he didn't move at all. I can't count on him at all. Xiao Xiao suddenly said, "Kill." As soon as he finished speaking, the two corpse generals by his side charged at Yixian. A vicious expression flashed through Yixian's eyes. He opened his palm and the green profound sword suddenly flew out. Bang! A ray of light slashed against the corpse general in the lead, and the green profound sword was blasted away. However, a deep gash was left behind on the corpse general's body. Xiao Zhao's face instantly fell when he witnessed this scene. That sword was actually able to damage the corpse general's body. Meanwhile, the three corpse generals had charged over to Yixian. Yixian issued a command in his heart, and a sword and shield appeared in front of him. Bang! 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 The sword and shield shook violently, and then Yixian was blasted over 10 kilometers away. At the instant that his figure stopped, the sword and shield in front of him suddenly transformed into a ray of light that slashed forward. Bang! The corpse general that charged towards him was instantly stopped on the spot by the ray of light. But right at this moment, a fist suddenly appeared on Yixian's right, and it headed straight for his head with the intention of shattering his head. Yixian stomped his right foot on the ground and activated the sword domain. An expansive light enveloped him and the corpse general. However, the light was instantly shattered as soon as it appeared. Bang! As soon as the light was shattered, Yixian's figure was blasted over 10 kilometers away. He just stopped when a terrifying force swept towards him. Yixian's pupils constricted. He issued a command in his heart, and the green profound sword transformed into a shield that blocked in front of him once more. Bang! The shield shook violently and then an expansive light erupted. Yixian retreated explosively once more. However, while he was retreating, a corpse general had suddenly appeared in front of him, and then it smashed its fist towards Yixian's face. It hadn't utilized any spatial energy, and it was just the purest form of strength. Such strength might not pose much of a threat to an ordinary person. After all, that person could rely on spatial energy to resist it. However, such pure strength was extremely threatening to Yixian. At this critical moment, Yixian sensed the aura of death once more. Death. He hadn't sensed such an aura in a very long time. At this instant, Yixian suddenly started laughing. As soon as he started laughing, the blood within his body suddenly started seething. In an instant, his entire body was covered in blood. In the next moment, the entire sky had turned blood red like an ocean of blood, and it was extremely bloody. The energy of his bloodline. After a very long time, he'd activated his bloodline once more. As the power of the bloodline was activated, an extremely terrifying aura swept out from the field. P.S. Please vote. Chapter 1976. At the instant his bloodline energy was activated, Yixian issued a command in his heart, and a ray of blood-red light slashed through the battlefield. Bang! In front of Yixian, the corpse general was sent flying thousands of feet away. When the corpse general came to a stop, its body split open. Xiao Xiao and the others had unsightly expressions on their faces when they witnessed this scene. They hadn't imagined that Yixian would actually have more trump cards. Bloodline energy. What sort of bloodline energy is that? It's actually able to improve Yixian's strength by so much. Xiao Xiao turned around to gaze at Zhou Xian with a gloomy expression. Are you still holding back at a time like this? Xiao Xiao had utilized practically all his trump cards up until this point. Yet now Yunjie was still holding back. This caused him to be extremely displeased. Zhou Xian fell silent. Actually, he'd had the intention to retreat since the very beginning. Because even the founding ancestor of the enforcement sect didn't dare offend this fellow. However, he knew that he and Yunjie had no way out now. If he retreated and allowed Yixian to mature or Yan Bianshan to attain the inaction realm, then both his and Yunjie's lives would be at Yunjie's mercy. Xiao Xiao spoke indifferently, What? Do you think you still have a way out now? The hesitation in Zhou Xian's eyes vanished when he heard this. He opened his palm and a strand of green smoke floated up into the air. In the next moment the space in the surroundings started trembling violently, and it didn't take long for 12 white-robed old men to walk out from the surroundings. Xiao Zhao's eyes narrowed slightly. Divine General Yun. Divine General Yun. This was a mysterious team that Ancestor Yunjia had established all those years ago. Supposedly there were 36 of them and 9 of them were even at the half-step in action realm. Following which, along with the fall of the Cloud World Ancestor, this mysterious team also disappeared. Yet now they'd appeared once more. Even though there were only 12 of them, all 12 of them were at the peak of the Daoist realm. These were all veteran Daoist realm powerhouses. Be it their combat strength or their foundation, they were all top-notch. Along with the appearance of these 12 people, the situation had undergone a tremendous change. Pressing. In terms of lineups and numbers, Yunjia and the law enforcement sect had completely crushed Yi Xian's side. On the other side, Nakayama of Silla and the Hidden Killer Pavilion Master's faces darkened. Based on the current lineup, the Hidden Killer's Pavilion and the Zhonglin Dao Nation had been completely crushed. This was especially so for the Hidden Killer Pavilion's Pavilion Master. He felt a headache coming on. His people were all assassins and they were not good at fighting head-on. Up until now he had already lost many assassins. If they continued fighting like this they would all be wiped out. At this moment, Zhou Xian suddenly looked at Yi Xian from afar. Kill. Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, the 12 divine generals charged at Yi Xian, and then over a dozen formidable auras swept through the surroundings like a tidal wave. For a time space throughout the heavens and the earth had become illusory. Yi Xian, who'd activated his bloodline, frowned. At this moment he still had a trace of consciousness. His face fell when he saw the 12 Daoist realm experts charge at him. Damn it. These old fellows don't care about martial virtue. They're actually ganging up on me. I have no choice but to go all out. Yi Xian was just about to attack when the space around him suddenly trembled. A moment later, 9 experts in golden armor suddenly appeared around Yi Xian. The Imperial Guard of the Lin Dao Nation. Meanwhile, Nakayama of Silla, who was being pressed down by 3 corpse generals, spoke abruptly. Little fellow, retreat for now and head to my Lin Dao Nation. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, Senior, will you cover our retreat? Nakayama of Silla replied, Of course. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, That's not a good idea, right? Nakayama of Silla spoke angrily, Then you cover our retreat. Yi Xian didn't even look back as he vanished into the distance. Senior, take care. Nakayama of Silla was speechless. A ferocious expression flashed through Xiao Zhao's eyes when he saw Yi Xian flee. Where do you think you're going? As he spoke he suddenly vanished on the spot. Meanwhile Yi Xian suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword. He drew his sword to decide life and death. An expanse of blood-red light shot out like a waterfall. Xiao Zhao's pupils constricted as he charged towards Yi Xian. However, he didn't retreat and he smashed his fist forward instead. He was going head-on against Yi Xian. He knew how terrifying Yi Xian's sword was, and he would only suffer a worse fate if he retreated. Because Yi Xian's sword was extremely swift. Bang! An expanse of sword light erupted, and Xiao Xiao retreated explosively for thousands of meters. As soon as he stopped moving, a flying sword suddenly slashed towards him. Xiao Xiao dodged to the side and avoided this lethal strike by a hair's breadth. However, his arms suddenly shattered into nothingness when he was about to continue chasing. Xiao Zhao's expression turned unsightly. Go after him. Don't let him escape to the Lin Dao Nation. He didn't know what trump cards the Lin Dao Nation had, but he didn't dare to underestimate them. Because the ancestor of the Lin Dao Nation was Jun Daolin. Zhou Xian and the others rushed out at the first possible moment. Meanwhile, the 2 corpse generals and divine generals Yun gave up on chasing Nakayama of Silla and chased after Yi Xian. Nakayama of Silla heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this. Fortunately, Yi Xian had fled to attract the enemy's firepower. Otherwise he might not be able to hold on if this continued. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, a black-robed figure appeared by Nakayama of Silla's side. It was the Pavilion Master of the Hidden Killer Pavilion. The Pavilion Master spoke in a low voice. Nakayama of Silla, aren't you afraid that he'll be killed? Nakayama of Silla spoke softly. How could that be? He won't die even if we die. The pavilion master frowned slightly. Why? Nakayama of Silla spoke indifferently, because he has someone backing him. The pavilion master was speechless. Nakayama of Silla glanced at the surroundings and said, "Let's go. We'll wait for him at the Lindao Nation." As he spoke, he turned around and left. The pavilion master hesitated for a moment and said, "Aren't you afraid that he'll be killed?" Nakayama of Silla didn't even turn around. "We'll make a huge profit if he doesn't die. If he dies, we won't lose out either because the person backing him will definitely avenge him. When the law enforcement sect and Yunjie kill him, it'll be the day they'll be annihilated. At that time we'll also make a profit." The pavilion master said, "We'll definitely make a profit?" Nakayama of Silla nodded. "Don't worry, Invakil. I asked you to protect this little guy. I won't cheat you. It won't be long before you and I reach the legendary inviolable state." After a moment of silence, Invakil said, "I hope so." As he spoke, he paused and asked again, "Up until now, the only people who have reached the inviolable state in the entire Dao Nation's history are Jun Daolin and Dao Ling, who might reach the inviolable state. As for the person backing young Master Yi," in the distance Nakayama of Silla stopped and spoke softly, "that's why it's terrifying. Because it means that our Dao Nation isn't at the peak of this universe." As he spoke, he turned around and left. Invakil fell silent. At the end of the starry sky, Yi Xian was flying on his sword. He had already raised his speed to the limit. Because he had activated his bloodline and Qingxian sword, Xiao and the others couldn't catch up to him for a while. However, he didn't leave them behind either. Yi Xian's expression was extremely ugly. He realized that when he chose to escape, all the powerhouses chased after him. Behind him, there were a total of 39 Daoist realm powerhouses. 39. Among them, the Corpse Generals and Divine General Yun weren't ordinary Daoist realm powerhouses. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Xiao Ta, if Dad encountered such a situation, what would he do?" Xiao Ta fell silent. Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. "Don't play dead." Xiao Ta said, "When Master encounters such a situation, he usually fights with his life." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Do you think I can win if I fight with my life on the line?" Xiao Ta said, "You can't win." Yi Xian asked, "Then do you have any ideas?" After a moment of silence, Xiao Ta said, "Based on the current situation, I suggest that you surrender, young master." Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, the space-time in front of Yi Xian suddenly split open. The next moment, an afterimage swept over. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and the Qingxian sword in his hand suddenly flew out. The space-time tore open and the afterimage was sent flying. And with that pause, Xiao and the others appeared in front of him. He was surrounded. Yi Xian looked at the dozens of Daoist realm powerhouses around him and sighed inwardly. At this moment, Xiao, who was in the lead, suddenly said, "Kill." No nonsense. He didn't want to give Yi Xian any chance. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "I surrender." Surrender. As soon as he said that, the powerhouses who were about to attack stopped. Xiao frowned slightly. "Surrender?" Yi Xian nodded. "I can't win. I surrender." Xiao looked at Yi Xian. "Since you surrender, then hand over the sword in your hand and Yan Banyi." Yi Xian nodded. "All right." As he spoke, he opened his palm and the Qingxian sword flew to Xiao. Xiao's eyes narrowed slightly, and he glanced at Yi Xian before holding the Qingxian sword. The moment he held the Qingxian sword, he frowned again. A wave of uneasiness silently spread from the bottom of his heart. Yi Xian said, "Aren't all of you curious about the person behind me? You can sense the person behind me through this sword." After looking at Yi Xian for a moment, Xiao suddenly let go of the Qingxian sword. "Why should I sense the person behind you?" Yi Xian's expression froze. Xiao sneered. "Yi Xian, you said that you surrendered on purpose and then gave me the sword. Your goal is to make me use this sword to sense the person behind you and then use that person to kill me." As he spoke up to this point, his expression turned gloomy. "Do I look like an idiot to you?" Yi Xian was speechless. "Damn it, this idiot doesn't play by the rules." Xiao put away the Qingxian sword and then he said, "Yi Xian, I know that there's someone behind you and I know that the person behind you is extremely strong. But let me tell you, you must die today. Unless you call the person behind you over right now. Otherwise, you're dead today." As he spoke, he waved his hand. Kill. As soon as he spoke, the powerhouses around him charged at Zhou Xian. In the distance, Zhou Xian slowly closed his eyes and the blood in his body boiled. One person against over 30 Daoist realm powerhouses? It was absolutely impossible. Although his strength had grown very quickly, and with the Xianxia sword his combat strength could go head-on against Daoist realm powerhouses. However, there were dozens of Daoist realm powerhouses in front of him. How could he play this fight? Zhou Xian knew that this was the only way out for him. Gradually, the aura around him grew stronger and the hint of sobriety in his eyes faded bit by bit. At this moment, Xiao Tao's voice suddenly sounded in Zhou Xian's mind. Young lord, do you want to try to sense Sister Tianming? Zhou Xian laughed. No. As soon as he said that, the last hint of sobriety in his eyes disappeared. He had completely entered a state of madness. Chapter 1977. Could he sense Qing? Surely he could. Even others could, so why couldn't he? So long as he wanted to, he would definitely be able to contact Qing. Because Qing wouldn't reject him. However, he didn't want to do that. It was completely different for others to sense Qing and him to sense Qing. If he tried to sense Qing by himself, then he would have to rely on Qing for his entire lifetime. Because once he encountered any difficulties, then he wouldn't think of a way to overcome them by himself, and he'd try to sense Qing instead. If that happened, then he would be crippled. Because if that happened, then why would he need to cultivate? Wouldn't it be better to stay by Qing's side all the time? Moreover, so long as he was by Qing's side, then he would be invincible. So, not taking the initiative to sense Qing was his bottom line. When his last trace of consciousness vanished. Bang! A terrifying aura suddenly swept out from within him, and then the space in the surroundings instantly started seething. He issued a command in his heart, and then countless blood-red swords of energy shot out from behind him. Divine General Yun, who was charging at the front, suddenly raised his arm to block them. Bang! The sword energy arrived before him, and its formidable force blasted him flying over 1 kilometer away. Zhou Xian suddenly roared furiously, "Soul!" In the distance, the expression of Xiao, who was about to attack, changed drastically. A sword howl resounded from within him. A moment later, Soul charged through his seal, and then it transformed into a ray of blood-red light that shot into Zhou Xian's grasp. Xiao was astounded when he witnessed this scene. That sword was actually able to charge through his seal? Right at this moment, Zhou Xian suddenly slashed forward with the azure sword in hand, and a ray of sword light shot out like a waterfall. The corpse general that was charging at the front was directly slashed flying, and it flew 30 kilometers away. When it finally came to a stop, its body had actually split into countless pieces. The expressions of everyone here changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. Even that corpse general couldn't resist Zhou Xian's sword? For a time, the Daoist realm experts actually didn't dare to move. Because Zhou Xian's attack just now was equivalent to instantly killing a corpse general. At this moment, Zhou Xian seemed to be covered in blood. The space-time he was in was like a sea of blood. Powerful auras surged out from his body. Most importantly, his aura was getting stronger and stronger. Xiao said in a low voice. His aura is growing stronger and stronger. It means that he's utilizing a secret technique, and such a technique is usually unable to last for long. We just have to delay him for a while and then he'll definitely die. Hearing this, everyone nodded their heads. The current Zhou Xian was completely abnormal. He was overdrafting his own strength, and this kind of overdraft usually couldn't last for too long. As long as they delayed, Zhou Xian would definitely die. Right at this moment, a sword suddenly appeared on the forehead of a Divine General Yun in the distance. A stream of blood shot out from the back of Divine General Yun's head. Everyone was astounded. Everyone looked at Zhou Xian. The Xianxia sword had returned to his hand, and at this moment the Xianxia sword in his hand was trembling slightly. This was because the Xianxia sword had absorbed the divine soul of Divine General Yun. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian suddenly spoke fiercely, "Die." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm and a golden mirror appeared in his grasp. A moment later he flipped his palm and the golden mirror suddenly shone towards Zhou Xian. After that, a golden beam of light surged out and shot towards Zhou Xian. In the distance, Zhou Xian swung his sword backhandedly. Bang! The golden beam of light instantly shattered and transformed into nothingness. Xianxia was stunned by this scene. It's gone just like that? Xianxia glanced at the mirror in his hand. It was Yunjie's #1 divine artifact, the divine cloud mirror. If he utilized it, then even a Daoist realm expert would find it difficult to resist its might. But this fellow had actually shattered it with a single swing of his sword? The expressions of Xiao and the others had become extremely unsightly. Because Yi Xian's strength had actually risen to such an extent. Most importantly, this fellow's aura was still rising explosively as if it had no limit. Meanwhile, Xiao suddenly spoke in a low voice. Wait. He's definitely going to be unable to hold on any longer. Xianxia hesitated for a moment and said, should we attack him together? He'll definitely die if we attack him together. Xiao shook her head. Even though we can kill him if we attack him together, his current strength and that sword in his possession can definitely be exchanged for many of us. That's too much of a loss. We just have to delay him a little longer. At that time, we don't even have to do anything because he'll be finished by himself. Xianxia gazed at Yi Xian while his brows knit together slightly. Actually, he was quite uneasy right now. Because up until now Yi Xian's aura was still rising explosively. Most importantly, this fellow didn't seem to be on the verge of suffering backlash. However, he knew that he would definitely suffer backlash if he utilized such a secret technique. When he thought up to here, Xianxia spoke in a low voice. Everyone set up the formation. As he spoke, he was about to attack. Meanwhile, Xiao shook her head once more. There's no need to set up the formation. That sword of his can disregard space, so spacetime formations are utterly useless against him. We just have to keep our distance from him and all of us can attack together to stop his flying sword when he attacks. The others nodded in agreement. Presently they didn't want to go head-on against Yi Xian as well. Because Yi Xian was simply a madman, an abnormal madman. Most importantly, his sword was extremely terrifying. The first person to attack him had a very high chance of dying. No one was confident in their ability to resist a single strike of Yi Xian's sword at this moment. On the other hand, Yi Xian had no intention of attacking in the distance. He just stood there as if he was waiting for something. Yi Xian held the green profound sword in his right hand, and it had transformed into a blood-red sword. The green profound sword wasn't a sword spirit, so it was able to keep his mind clear. At this moment he'd entered a completely berserk state. However, he didn't attack and he was waiting. No one knew what he was waiting for. Meanwhile, Xianxia suddenly said, retreat. Because the space before them had actually turned blood red, and even they were affected by the killing intent and evil energy within it. All of them retreated over 10 kilometers when they heard this. However, they'd surrounded Yi Xian, so it was utterly impossible for Yi Xian to flee now. Just like that, time passed slowly. Yi Xian's aura was still rising explosively, but he still showed no signs of suffering backlash. The expressions of Xianxia and the others grew more and more unsightly when they witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, Xianxia suddenly said, Sect Master Xiao, let your corpse general hold him back for now, and then we'll attack together to kill him. What do you think? Xiao fell silent. With Yi Xian's current strength, if the corpse general attacked him, then he would most likely be killed. Moreover, he might even lose more than one corpse general. Presently, the law enforcement sect didn't have many corpse generals left. They lost even more. Meanwhile, Xianxia spoke solemnly, Sect Master Xiao, how about this? I'll send out Divine General Yun and you send out a corpse general. 2 peak Daoist realm experts will be enough to hold him back. So long as we can hold him back, then we'll be able to kill him. Otherwise, something unexpected might happen if this continues. Xiao glanced at Yi Xian, who didn't move, and he fell silent for a moment before he said, all right. As soon as he finished speaking, he issued a command in his heart, and a corpse general charged at Yi Xian. At the same time, another divine general Yun charged over as well. However, he was slightly smarter and he'd slowed down on purpose. At the instant that divine general Yun and the corpse general charged over, Xiao and the others immediately attacked as well. Just as the corpse general was about to reach Yi Xian suddenly raised his head. In the next moment, before anyone could react, a beam of sword light slashed at the corpse general. Bang! The corpse general was instantly obliterated. Right at this instant, the azure sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly vanished. At the same time, a blood-red armor appeared around his body. The armor protected his entire body. At practically the exact same moment, Countless powerful strands of energy drowned Yi Xian. Rumble, rumble, rumble. For a time the entire heavens and the earth shook violently. How terrifying was it when a few dozen Daoist realm experts attacked in unison. In an instant the area where Yi Xian stood had been transformed into a pitch-black vortex, and the space where he stood had been obliterated. It didn't take long for Xiao and the others to be stunned, because they noticed that while the space where Yi Xian stood had been obliterated, Yi Xian was still alive. He was still alive. Zhou Xian gazed at Yi Xian with disbelief. How could this be possible? Xiao's eyes were filled with disbelief as well, and his hands had started to tremble. It was a full-force attack from a few dozen Daoist realm experts. But this fellow actually resisted it? What sort of monster is he? Right at this moment Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. Along with his disappearance, a blood-red sword light flashed through the battlefield. One of the divine General Yun's brows were pierced through by a sword before he could even react. Meanwhile all of them reacted to what had happened. Zhou Xian roared furiously, "Kill him! Kill him!" Upon hearing this, all the powerhouses present charged towards Yi Xian again. Suddenly, the sword in Yi Xian's hand transformed into a blood-red armor that enveloped his body. Rumble. Yi Xian was blasted by countless strands of energy again, and the space around him was obliterated. They were about to attack again when a terrifying force suddenly appeared here. The expressions of Zhou Xian and the others changed drastically and they stopped what they were doing. They raised their heads and saw bolts of blood-red divine lightning suddenly appear in the sky. All of them were horrified by this scene and they retreated explosively. The laws. Xiao and the others had extremely unsightly expressions on their faces. They'd actually forgotten that this expansive space was covered in the energy of the laws that Jun Daolin had left behind. So long as they destroyed this expansive space, then they would trigger the restrictions that Jun Daolin had left behind. But they'd actually forgotten about that just now. Suddenly Xiao spoke furiously, "Retreat. Don't utilize any profound energy at all. Let Yi Xian deal with those laws." All of them retreated in unison and then they restrained their auras. Meanwhile Yi Xian suddenly stood on the spot and then his aura vanished. Moreover, it was like he didn't exist at all, and all of them dared to say that they couldn't sense him. Xiao was on the verge of exploding with rage when she witnessed this scene. "Have you really gone mad or are you faking it?" All of them were speechless. Meanwhile Xiao suddenly sighed softly. Even though the young master has gone mad, he's still wretched to the core. But he's still wretched in his bones. Chapter 1978. Is he really mad or is he faking it? Actually Yi Xian had really gone mad right now. But just as Xiao had said, while he was mad he was still a wretched person in his bones. However, he was still wretched in his bones. This was completely an instinct. Even a lunatic would have instincts. Meanwhile, the aura of the blood-red divine lightning in the sky was growing stronger, and it was so strong that it filled them with despair. It was the energy of the laws of peerless realm experts. Even if countless years had passed, it was still so strong that it filled them with despair. This was what an peerless realm expert was like. Xiao and the others gazed at the blood-red divine lightning, and besides fear, there was a trace of yearning in their eyes. Their lifelong pursuit was the peerless realm. Meanwhile Xiao suddenly gazed at Yi Xian. At this moment Yi Xian was still standing there without moving, but his aura was still rising explosively. It really seemed like there was no limit to it. Xiao's expression turned unsightly when he witnessed this scene. Is this fellow's bloodline really immune to backlash? Zhou Xian suddenly spoke solemnly. His bloodline is. How terrifying. He's absolutely not an ordinary person. Xiao's expression was gloomy. I know he's not an ordinary person, but so what? Do we have a way out now? Zhou Xian fell silent. Actually, they had no way out since a very long time ago. If they cut off all means of retreat now, then they might have a chance at survival. When he thought up to here, Zhou Xian spoke solemnly. What should we do now? Xiao raised his head to glance at the energy of the laws, and then he said, "We'll wait for the laws to vanish." Zhou Xian was just about to speak when the divine lightning suddenly rained down from the sky. Their targets were everyone here, including Yi Xian. Everyone who'd attacked just now. The expressions of everyone here instantly changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. Xiao roared furiously, "Retreat for now." As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately led the others to turn around and flee. As for Zhou Xian, he was fleeing as well. However, the divine lightning seemed to have a mind of its own as it chased after them at an extremely fast speed. All the Daoist realm experts here were terrified out of their wits when they witnessed this scene, and then they fled desperately towards the distance. Zhou Xian fled even faster, but he was still caught up by a blood-colored divine lightning. He suddenly turned around and the green profound sword transformed into a sword shield in front of him. Rumble. The blood-colored divine lightning struck the green profound sword, causing it to tremble violently. Boom. Zhou Xian was blasted hundreds of thousands of meters away along with his shield. As soon as he stopped moving, he spat out a mouthful of blood essence. Moreover, his body had even split apart. However, his sword and shield were still intact. Right at this moment, Zhou Xian suddenly raised his head. The bolt of blood-red lightning hadn't vanished, and it was chasing after him again. A trace of malevolence flashed across Zhou Xian's eyes. He opened his palm and the azure profound sword appeared in his hand. He dashed forward and slashed down with his sword. A blood-red sword light slashed down and directly slashed the divine lightning. Bang! The sword light exploded into pieces while Zhou Xian was blasted over 100 m away. When his figure finally stopped, he'd fallen into a spatial abyss. As soon as he entered the spatial abyss, countless strands of terrifying energy swept towards him like waves, and they were about to drown him. Zhou Xian didn't dodge and allowed them to drown him. Bang! The spatial abyss seethed, but Zhou Xian was completely fine. Meanwhile, the bolt of divine lightning didn't pursue him. It just stopped outside the spatial abyss, and it gradually started to vanish bit by bit as if it hadn't sensed Zhou Xian's presence. As soon as the bolt of divine lightning vanished, Zhou Xian charged forward. On the other side, because Xiao Zhao's group had come to an end as well. More than half of Xiao Zhao's group had perished. All the corpse generals had been annihilated. All of them had been annihilated. Because at the last moment of crisis, Xiao Zhao had gotten all the corpse generals to block in front of him. He had no choice but to do so. If he hadn't done so, he might have died. Yun Jie's group had also suffered heavy losses. More than half of them had perished and Divine General Yun only had 2 left. Originally, both sides had 39 Daoist realm experts, but now there were less than 10 of them left. Xiao Zhao's face was terrifyingly gloomy. Zhou Xian's face was ashen. "We're finished," Xiao Zhao said fiercely. "Kill that Zhou Xian." Zhou Xian roared. "How are we going to kill him?" Xiao Zhao said. "Do you think he can withstand that divine lightning?" Hearing that, Zhou Xian's brows slightly furrowed. Xiao Zhao clenched his fists tightly. That divine lightning was left behind by Jun Daolin. It contains powerful law energy. Even a peak Daoist realm expert can't withstand it. Right at this moment, his voice stopped abruptly because the head of an expert from the enforcement sect had fallen slowly to the ground not too far away from him. Everyone's expressions changed drastically. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian had appeared not too far away from them. As for Zhou Xian, he was perfectly fine. Xiao Zhao instantly went mad when he witnessed this scene. How could you possibly? Zhou Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. A ray of blood-red light flashed through the battlefield like a thunderclap. Xiao Zhao's pupils constricted. He didn't retreat but charged forward instead, and then he smashed his fist towards Zhou Xian's sword. He went head-on against it. As soon as his fist and sword collided, bang! Along with a world-shaking explosion, both of them retreated explosively at the same time. Moreover, when Xiao Zhao stopped moving, his entire right arm had transformed into nothingness. The expressions of Zhou Xian and the others instantly became extremely unsightly when they witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, Xiao Zhao roared furiously, "What are all of you looking at? Fight him to the death." All of them recovered from their shock when they heard Xiao Zhao, and a wisp of a ferocious expression flashed through Zhou Xian's eyes. "Kill." As soon as he spoke, all of them charged at Zhou Xian. At this moment they couldn't be bothered about anything else. "Either you die or I die. Let's go all out." At this moment Zhou Xian, who was in the distance, suddenly turned around and ran. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the horizon, leaving only a sea of blood behind him. All of them were stunned when they witnessed this scene. That fellow ran. He ran. He's not going to fight anymore? Zhou Xian and the others felt extremely aggrieved. It was like their punches had struck cotton. Suddenly, A ray of blood-red light flashed. The head of one of the Daoist realm experts flew into the air while blood sprayed over 10 m away. The expressions of everyone here changed drastically. All of them turned around to look at the ray of blood-red light that had vanished in the distance. He killed Xianxia and fled. The expressions of the Daoist realm experts were unsightly to the extreme when they witnessed this scene. Of course, there was even more fear in their hearts right now. At this moment they were truly terrified. In the beginning, Zhou Xian was only barely able to fight a Daoist realm expert. But now Zhou Xian could instantly kill a Daoist realm expert. Most importantly, Zhou Xian's aura was still rising explosively. If this continues, then this fellow will probably even be able to kill a half-step in action realm expert. Their expressions grew even more unsightly when they thought up to this point. Meanwhile, Xiao spoke ferociously. Hill. As he spoke up to this point, a ray of light suddenly appeared here. The expressions of everyone here changed drastically. Zhou Xian suddenly turned around and pressed his palms together. Bang! A sword was clamped between his palms, but it only took a moment for his palms to shatter. Meanwhile, the experts by his side attacked in unison. Rumble! An afterimage was blasted over 10 kilometers away. It was Zhou Xian. As soon as he was blasted flying, Zhou Xian turned around and flashed away and he vanished into the horizon. He ran again. Zhou Xian's face was as red as a pig's liver. The surroundings suddenly fell deathly silent. What should we do? They didn't want to think about it, but they were helpless against Zhou Xian now. No one could resist Zhou Xian's current attack. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian gazed at Xiao. Think of a way. All of them looked at Xiao. Xiao remained silent for a long time, and then he gazed at Zhou Xian. Can you still summon your ancestor? Zhou Xian spoke solemnly. I can. But I'm worried that. Xiao shook his head. There's nothing we can do. Only a half-step in action realm expert can suppress him. Otherwise we'll be exhausted to death if this continues. Meanwhile, a Daoist realm expert spoke abruptly. Will he really not suffer backlash? Everyone's faces fell once more. Backlash. A long time had passed since the beginning, but Zhou Xian showed no signs of suffering from backlash. Conversely, this guy was becoming fiercer and fiercer. Xiao fell silent. In fact, he didn't understand it either. Up until now, Zhou Xian showed no signs of suffering from backlash. Conversely, Zhou Xian's strength had increased by countless times. What kind of bloodline is this? Most disgusting of all was that Zhou Xian seemed like a madman, but he wasn't mad at all. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian suddenly opened his palm and a token appeared in his hand. Immediately after that, the token floated up slowly and transformed into a wisp of green smoke that vanished into the horizon. Bang! Meanwhile, a figure appeared in the sky and it gradually became material. It wasn't long before a middle-aged man appeared within their fields of vision. Zhou Xian and the others hurriedly bowed respectfully when they saw the middle-aged man. Greetings, martial ancestor. The founder of Yunmingzi. At his peak he was at half-step inanimate realm. Although it was only half-step, it was already very terrifying. There was still a world of difference between Daoist realm and half-step inanimate realm. At this moment, Yunmingzi looked down at Zhou Xian with an expressionless face. What's wrong? Zhou Xian bowed respectfully and then recounted what had happened. When Zhou Xian finished, Yunmingzi narrowed his eyes slightly. That Zhou Xian has Dao Ling's inheritance? Zhou Xian hurriedly said, yes. Hearing that, the corners of Yunmingzi's mouth lifted slightly. Interesting. He actually has Dao Ling's inheritance, and this Dao Ling. At this point, a trace of unwillingness flashed in his eyes. I never thought that someone in the future could reach inanimate realm. Zhou Xian and the others didn't dare to speak. At this moment, Yunmingzi looked into the distance and said indifferently, still hiding. As soon as he said that, he grabbed the air with his right hand. With this grab, the space-time there suddenly distorted, and the next moment, a blood-colored sword light tore through the air. Seeing this scene, Yunmingzi's mouth curled into a disdainful smile. Trying to escape in front of me? As soon as he said that, he took a step forward. Chapter 1979. Yunmingzi took a step forward and the space in the distance suddenly split apart. A ray of blood-red light shattered and then a figure retreated explosively. It was Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian retreated for over 100 kilometers before he stopped, and Yunmingzi appeared in front of him as soon as he stopped. Yunmingzi frowned slightly as he looked at Zhou Xian. Uneasy. A trace of uneasiness had actually arisen in the depths of his heart when he saw Zhou Xian. Moreover, the stronger his killing intent was, the stronger this trace of uneasiness was. He's not simple. Yun Mingzi looked at Zhou Xian and didn't attack for a while. Meanwhile, Xiao and the others had arrived. When they saw that Yun Mingzi didn't attack, Xiao and Zhou Xian's expressions became slightly unsightly. They were worried. Both of them were slightly worried that Yun Mingzi would betray them like the ancestor of the law enforcement sect. Suddenly Yun Mingzi chuckled. Interesting. He's actually able to make me feel threatened. As he spoke, a wisp of killing intent flashed through his eyes. However, I like to do the opposite. He took a step forward as soon as he finished speaking. As soon as his foot touched the ground, an extremely dreadful force suddenly crushed down from the top of Zhou Xian's head. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian opened his palm. A ray of sword light shot into the sky. The sword tore through the sky and the powerful force was instantly shattered. Yun Mingzi's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this, and then he suddenly smashed his fist forward. Bang! Zhou Xian was punched into a mysterious origin of space and time. When he fell into the mysterious abyss of space and time, a black space-time divine thunder suddenly struck him. Zhou Xian didn't dodge. Bang! The bolt of space-time lightning entered the green profound sword and was completely absorbed. Yun Mingzi frowned slightly. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian hurriedly said, "Martial ancestor, that sword in his hand can disregard space." Sword. Yun Mingzi looked at the green profound sword in Zhou Xian's hand. A moment later, a trace of astonishment flashed across his eyes. This sword is indeed extraordinary. As he spoke, he spread out his right hand and pressed down lightly. In an instant, the space where Zhou Xian was turned into a huge space-time net. Seeing this scene, Zhou Xian and Xiao Zhao's expressions became slightly unsightly. Damn it, I already said this fellow can ignore space-time, but this Yun Mingzi actually wants to use space-time to deal with Zhou Xian. In the distance, Zhou Xian still did not dodge. He allowed the space-time net to envelop him. Without any mishap, he absorbed it cleanly. A look of surprise flashed in Yun Mingzi's eyes. It really can ignore any space-time. Interesting. Zhou Xian hesitated for a moment and then he said, "Grandmaster, this person's bloodline is extremely special. The longer it lasts, the stronger he becomes." What he meant was, hurry up and King kill him. Yun Mingzi gazed at Zhou Xian. "Are you teaching me how to do things?" His voice was icy cold and pierced through the heart. Zhou Xian's expression changed drastically and he hurriedly said, "I wouldn't dare." Yun Mingzi glanced at Zhou Xian and then he gazed at Zhou Xian. He was about to speak when a blood-red sword stabbed towards him like a thunderclap. A trace of disdain flashed in Yun Mingzi's eyes, and then he clamped his fingers together. Bang! The green profound sword was clamped, but in the next moment his expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly let go of the green profound sword before retreating explosively. Because at the instant he clamped Zhou Xian's sword, the green profound sword was actually absorbing him. It can even devour souls. A trace of disbelief flashed in Yun Mingzi's eyes. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian appeared in front of him once more, and then a sword slashed down from above his head. His space-time was torn apart. A wisp of ruthlessness flashed in Yun Mingzi's eyes. He flicked his sleeve and a powerful force surged out. Bang! That force forcefully resisted Zhou Xian's green profound sword. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian suddenly roared furiously. Bang! A wave of monstrous killing intent and evil energy instantly enveloped Yun Mingzi, and the impact of the powerful killing intent and evil energy caused Yun Mingzi's mind to become dazed. However, it was at this instant that Zhou Xian's green profound sword suddenly entered Yun Mingzi's head. Yun Mingzi was stunned. Zhou Xian and the others were stunned as well. It's gone just like that? Meanwhile, Zhou Xian suddenly retreated over 100 m while his green profound sword was madly devouring Yun Mingzi's soul. Yun Mingzi gazed at Zhou Xian with a savage expression. "Just you wait." At this moment Zhou Xian suddenly gave him the middle finger. Yun Mingzi instantly went berserk and he roared like a wild beast. "Ant! How dare you look down on me?" The green profound sword suddenly trembled violently, and then it completely absorbed Yun Mingzi's soul. After it absorbed Yun Mingzi's soul, the green profound sword directly transformed into a sword light and returned to Zhou Xian's hand. "It's gone." At the side, Zhou Xian and the others were silent. Yi Xian's strength was growing every moment, and there really was no limit. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly looked at Zhou Xian and the others, and a trace of fear flashed in Zhou Xian's eyes. Retreat. He didn't want to fight anymore. Because he couldn't win. Without the slightest hesitation, Zhou Xian led the remaining experts of Yunjia and turned to flee. However, Xiao didn't flee. Xiao just stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, I know you're not crazy, and I also know that I will die without a doubt. Before I die, I want to see the person behind you. This request. A blood sword suddenly pierced through his brows, and a stream of blood spurted out from the back of his head. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth lifted slightly. Not worthy. With that he turned into a sword light and disappeared into the distance. The green profound sword crazily devoured Xiao's soul, and a moment later, the green profound sword suddenly turned into a sword light and disappeared into the distance. Xiao no longer existed in this world. Yi Xian didn't chase after Zhou Xian and the others, but directly went to the law enforcement sect. At this moment the law enforcement sect was in chaos, because just a moment ago, the sect leader's soul tablet had shattered, which meant that the sect leader had died. Not only that, all the Daoist realm experts who went out were also gone. Some sharp-eyed ones had already fled, but there were still some who didn't. On this day a blood sword suddenly flew into the law enforcement sect, and the next moment, a series of miserable screams rang out. Yi Xian stood in the sky above the law enforcement sect, his eyes closed and waves of blood gushed out from his body. Soon the sky above the law enforcement sect was turned into a sea of blood. At this moment Xiao suddenly said, "Young lord, are you crazy?" In fact, Xiao also couldn't figure out whether Yi Xian was crazy or not. If he said he was crazy, he was very cunning and even knew how to mock people, but if he said he was not crazy, he could feel that Yi Xian had completely activated the power of bloodline. Yi Xian didn't respond to Xiao, his eyes closed, and if you looked closely, you could see that his body was trembling slightly. Xiao continued to ask, "Young lord, are you really crazy or pretending to be crazy?" At this moment Yi Xian opened his palm and Xiao appeared in his hand. Xiao hurriedly said, "Young lord, what are you doing?" He knew how terrifying the crazy demon bloodline was, and when his master activated the bloodline he really didn't recognize his own family. Yi Xian didn't attack and he just looked at Xiao. His eyes were like a sea of blood and it was extremely terrifying. When he saw that Yi Xian didn't intend to attack, Xiao relaxed, and he was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly punched Xiao. Bang! Xiao was blasted thousands of meters away. A shrill cry resounded from the distant sky. At this moment Yi Xian vanished on the spot, and in the next moment he punched Xiao again. Bang! Xiao flew out again. In the sky Xiao said angrily, "Young lord, are you really crazy or pretending to be crazy?" There was no answer. Yi Xian chased after Xiao and beat him up. About 15 minutes later Yi Xian finally stopped. In the sky Xiao hit at the side and shivered. At this moment Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword flew into his hand. The green profound sword was blood red. Below there was no one left alive in the entire law enforcement sect. Sect annihilation. Yi Xian kept the green profound sword and turned into a blood-red sword ray, disappearing at the end of the sky. But very quickly he turned back and appeared in front of Xiao and then kept Xiao into his body. Then he turned into a blood-red sword ray, disappearing at the end of the sky. In Yi Xian's body Xiao was confused. "Damn! Young lord, are you crazy?" Yi Xian did not answer. Xiao was a little annoyed. This young lord might not be crazy. Could it be that I got beaten up for nothing? Should I kill my young lord? Thinking of this, Xiao was shocked by himself. Recently he seemed to be a little arrogant. Daolin Nation. Nakayama of Silla stood on the city wall. He looked at the sky and his whole person was a little dazed. Yi Xian killed dozens of Daoist realm experts. This was the news he had just received. Nakayama of Silla was silent. Originally he thought that the person behind Yi Xian would definitely appear, but he did not expect that the person behind Yi Xian did not appear at all, and Yi Xian alone killed those Daoist realm experts. This was too unbelievable. At this moment Invakil appeared and he said in a deep voice, "The law enforcement sect is gone." Nakayama of Silla said softly, "He destroyed it?" Invakil nodded. "He went to Yunjia now." Nakayama of Silla was silent. Invakil was also silent. At this moment he was feeling lucky. In fact, he had wanted to kill Yi Xian at the beginning, and he wanted to intercept the law enforcement sect in Yunjia. He wanted to kill Yi Xian first, and then obtain Yi Xian and Yan Bianshan's inheritance. However, Nakayama of Silla convinced him. Fortunately, he did not do that, or the Invikil pavilion would disappear completely. Invikil looked at Nakayama of Silla. What should we do next? Nakayama of Silla laughed. The law enforcement sect is destroyed, their territory. Invikil hesitated and then said, that was destroyed by young Master Yi. It's not good for us to go and take it, right? Nakayama of Silla laughed. That's easy. We will occupy the territory and then give him the Supreme God Crystal. Invikil nodded slightly. All right. Nakayama of Silla was about to speak, but at this moment, a shadow appeared in front of him. It was unknown what the shadow said, but Nakayama of Silla's pupils suddenly shrank. There's a change. Chapter 1980. There's a change. Invikil frowned slightly when he heard Nakayama of Silla's words. What's wrong? Nakayama of Silla was silent for a moment before a ruthless glint flashed in his eyes. Let's go. After saying that, he disappeared on the spot. Invikil hesitated for a moment before he followed. Yunjia. Yunjia was located in the clouds. Back then, Ancestor Yunjia used the clouds to comprehend Tao, so he created Yunjia in the clouds. In the era of Yunmingzi, Yunjia was number 1. Back then, Yunmingzi was actually an extraordinary genius as well. He had a chance to reach the inaction state as well. Unfortunately, he hadn't been able to break through the last level. Even so, he was still known as the number 1 person after Jun Daolin until Daoling appeared. Back then, Yunmingzi was known as the number 1 under the inaction realm. On this day, a blood-red light suddenly appeared above Yunjia. Inside Yunjia, Zhou looked up at the sky. A man stood in the sky. It was Yi Xian. Yi Xian's aura was still growing. Seeing this, Zhou's expression became extremely ugly. Will this guy really not suffer from the backlash? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and a blood-red sword slashed down from the sky. Zhou's expression changed drastically. Formation. As soon as he said that, the surrounding clouds suddenly gathered to form a huge cloud shield above everyone. The sword slashed down. Boom. The cloud shield shook violently, but it didn't break. Zhou and the others immediately heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, another blood-red sword slashed down. Boom. With a deafening sound, the cloud shield shook violently and then cracked. Seeing this scene, the faces of Zhou and the others instantly darkened. In the sky, Yi Xian swung his sword madly, and the cracks on the cloud shield became bigger and bigger. Zhou suddenly roared, killing array. As soon as he finished speaking, beams of light shot into the sky and blasted straight at Yi Xian. In the sky, Yi Xian willed and the green profound sword suddenly turned into a sword shield in front of him. Boom 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 boom. The sword and shield trembled violently, but it forcibly blocked all the light pillars. Seeing this scene, Zhou's eyes flashed with malevolence. Continue. As soon as he finished speaking, countless powerful forces shot into the sky from below and blasted straight at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yunjia activated all the formations. In the sky, Yi Xian stood behind the sword and shield, allowing the powerful forces to strike the green profound sword. The two sides were in a deadlock. Gradually, the faces of Zhou and the other experts of Yunjia darkened. Because activating these formations consumed a huge amount of energy, and if this continued, then Yunjia wouldn't be able to hold on at all. Once the formations were gone, then would anyone be able to stop Yi Xian from charging down? Zhou stared fixedly at Yi Xian who stood in the sky, and he clenched his fists tightly. He was panicking. At this moment he really had started to panic. Because if this continued, then Yunjia would definitely be unable to hold on. Once Yunjia was unable to hold on, then no one would be able to stop Yi Xian's sword. Meanwhile, Zhou spoke abruptly, use all the resources of the sect to maintain the formations. One of the experts by his side stepped back when he heard this. Zhou looked up at Yi Xian and then he said, Yi Xian, I know you're not mad. I want to talk to you. In the sky, Yi Xian didn't speak and he just stood behind his sword and shield. Zhou continued, Yi Xian, continuing to fight will only cause both sides to suffer. Moreover, I can tell you that my founding ancestor Yunjia Yunmingzi hasn't perished. If you go too far. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly turned around and disappeared into the horizon. He ran. Zhou Xian was stunned when he witnessed this scene. This fellow is willing to make peace? It didn't take long for him to deny such a foolish thought. Yi Xian had just annihilated the enforcement sect, so based on Yi Xian's character, how could he possibly make peace? Meanwhile, one of the experts of Yunjie spoke in a low voice. Sect leader, should we withdraw the formations or not? Zhou Xian's expression suddenly became unsightly when he heard this. He had already figured out Yi Xian's intentions. Yi Xian was retreating in order to advance. If Yi Xian retreated, then they would face a problem. Should they withdraw the formations or not? If they didn't withdraw, the formations would consume a huge amount of energy, and Yunjie wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Because Yunjie had activated all the formations. Once they withdrew, what should they do if Yi Xian suddenly turned back? Once the formation was gone, who would be able to stop Yi Xian? To withdraw or not to withdraw? Zhou Xian was in a dilemma. The experts of Yunjie understood this as well, and they immediately fell into silence. Zhou Xian glanced at the sky and released his divine sense. In the next moment his expression changed. He sensed a vicious and murderous intent. Yi Xian is still here. They couldn't withdraw the formations. If they withdrew the formations, Yi Xian would definitely return and kill them. At that time Yunjie would be finished. Zhou Xian said fiercely, "Everyone, I've received news that the ancestral master will arrive soon. As long as we hold on for a while, Yi Xian will definitely die." At this time one of the experts of Yunjie said in a low voice, "Realm Lord, if the person behind Yi Xian appears." Zhou Xian turned around and roared, "Why do you have so much nonsense to say?" The expert of Yunjie was dumbfounded. On the other side, Yi Xian stood quietly among the clouds. His eyes were slightly closed and the clouds around him had turned blood red. Yi Xian just stood there and no one knew what he was going to do. Xiaota dared not speak. When Yi Xian was normal, it dared to be mischievous. But now Yi Xian was obviously not normal. If it dared to be mischievous, it would definitely be beaten up. However, it firmly believed that Yi Xian was pretending to be crazy. Because when Yi Xian hit it, he used his fists instead of the Xianxian sword. One should know that the Xianxian sword could hurt its core, but Yi Xian did not use it. Obviously Yi Xian was pretending to be crazy. But it dared not say it. It was afraid of being beaten up. A person who was really crazy was not scary. What was scary was a person who was pretending to be crazy. However, it was also a little curious. How could this young master remain conscious after completely activating his bloodline? Could it be that the young master's bloodline was not pure? At this moment Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, the space-time in front of him turned blood red at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, the space-time in front of him turned into a sea of blood. Yi Xian turned around, and with this turn the entire sky turned into a sea of blood. Not long after, Yi Xian appeared in the sky above Yunjie again. Seeing Yi Xian again, Zhou Xian and the others' faces instantly turned ugly. Damn it! This idiot is here again. Just as Zhou Xian was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly turned into a sword light and slashed at him. Zhou Xian's eyelid twitched and he quickly said, "Defend." As soon as he said that, countless light pillars shot up from within Yunjie. This time Yi Xian did not defend but rushed forward. Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. One of the light pillars was directly split into two, but in the next moment, countless light pillars directly drowned him. Boom! Yi Xian was blasted thousands of meters away. Seeing this, Zhou Xian and the others instantly heaved sighs of relief. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared on the spot. A blood-red sword light shot down from the sky. Boom! A light pillar was directly slashed into pieces, but countless light pillars continued to rush up from within Yunjie. Therefore, after Yi Xian slashed a light pillar, he would be drowned by countless light pillars in the next moment. But this time Yi Xian actually did not retreat and continued to slash madly. Gradually, the faces of Zhou Xian and the others became more and more unsightly. Because they noticed that Yi Xian was advancing. Although it was very slow, he was advancing bit by bit. Zhou Xian stared at Yi Xian, his hands were clenched tightly and his hands were trembling. At this time an expert of Yunjie who was beside him said miserably, "Realm Lord, what should we do?" If this continued, sooner or later, Yi Xian would break the formation and rush into Yunjie. After a moment of silence, Zhou Xian said, "All of you leave. Leave." When they heard this, the experts of the cloud world were stunned. Zhou Xian said softly, "Let's go." An expert of Yunjie said in a low voice, "Then Realm Lord Yu," Zhou Xian chuckled. "His target has always been me." Everyone was silent. Zhou Xian said again, "Hurry up and leave." In the field, the experts of Yunjie looked at each other. No one moved. Zhou Xian looked at everyone. "If you can survive, rebuild Yunjie in the future. Dying here now is meaningless, understand?" Everyone looked at each other again. They were still hesitant. At this time, Xian was about to enter Yunjie. Seeing this, no one hesitated anymore. They turned around and left. Zhou Xian looked up at Xian in the sky. He slowly clenched his right hand, and a powerful force gathered in his palm. At this moment, as a beam of blood-red light erupted, the beam of light in the sky was completely shattered by Xian. The whole sky was a mess. Most importantly, Xian controlled his force very well. He did not destroy the space-time of this universe, so he did not attract Jun Daolin's law. In the sky, Xian slowly walked down with the blood sword in his hand. Below, Zhou Xian laughed. "Xian, come." As soon as he said this, he suddenly leaped up into the sky with a powerful force. In the sky, Xian suddenly stopped, and then he took a step forward, and with each step he took, he slashed with his sword. In the sky, Zhou Xian's body froze in the air, and Xian had appeared behind him. Xian opened his palm and continued walking down. Behind him, Zhou Xian's eyes were dull. He had not expected Xian's strength to grow to such an extent in such a short period of time. He was led into a trap by Xiao. The color in Zhou Xian's eyes gradually disappeared, and at this time he seemed to see something, and his eyes suddenly opened wide and he became excited. Below, Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword returned to his hand. He turned to look at the sky, and in the distant sky, a middle-aged man was slowly walking over. This person was none other than Yun Mingzi. This time it was not a clone, nor was it a strand of soul, but his real body. His real body had arrived. At this time Zhou Xian suddenly laughed. Xian, your death is here." At this time a sword suddenly pierced through the back of his head and then into his mouth. His voice stopped abruptly. Chapter 1981. Xian walked over to Zhou Xian, turned around and drew his sword. The green profound sword was pulled out of Zhou Xian's mouth, and a stream of blood sprayed out. At the same time, Zhou Xian's soul was devoured by the green profound sword. Yun Mingzi walked slowly towards Xian. Yun Mingzi. His main body. Meanwhile, Nakayama of Scylla and Invicil had solemn expressions on their faces. They hadn't expected Yun Mingzi's main body to come here. This fellow had reached the half-step in action realm countless years ago. Moreover, he was known as the #1 expert below the inaction realm. Now that so many years had passed, even if he hadn't reached the inaction realm, it was impossible that he hadn't improved. They were in big trouble. Invicil spoke solemnly. "Nakayama of Scylla, what should we do now?" Nakayama of Scylla fell silent for a moment and then he said, "It's beyond our ability." Invicil fell silent. Indeed, with Yun Mingzi's appearance, it wasn't something that he and Nakayama of Scylla could interfere with. Moreover, if Xian died, then they might die as well. Would Yun Mingzi let them go? He definitely wouldn't. Meanwhile, Qinshi suddenly walked towards Yun Mingzi with a blood-red sword in his hand. A mocking smile curled up the corners of Yun Mingzi's mouth. "What? You want to kill me?" Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. Yun Mingzi pressed his fingers together. Bang! Xian's green profound sword was clamped, and Yun Mingzi was about to exert force when Xian suddenly let go of the green profound sword. In an instant, a wave of blood-red sword light enveloped him and Yun Mingzi. Bang! The sword light tore through the air. But in the next moment, an extremely terrifying and powerful force suddenly erupted from the battlefield. Rumble! Xian retreated over 1 kilometer away with his sword. Yun Mingzi, who stood before Xian, was completely unharmed. Seeing this, Nakayama of Scylla and Invicil's faces immediately darkened. Right at this moment, Yun Mingzi suddenly smiled and said, "Come, let me see if you can really ignore space and time." As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward and gently waved his right hand at Xian. Kacha! In an instant, the space and time that Xian was in began to crack like glass. What a strange space-time power. Xian just stood there without moving, letting the space-time he was in crack layer by layer. Not long after, Xian was already in a mysterious space-time black hole, and this space-time black hole was still annihilating bit by bit, but Xian was completely fine. The smile on Dreamcloud's face gradually vanished when he witnessed this scene, and it was replaced by a gloomy expression. At this moment he was a little shocked. The guy in front of him was actually able to ignore the power of time and space that he had used. Was this guy really just in the Heartless realm? A question flashed through Dreamcloud's mind. Right at this moment, Xian took a step forward and he'd left the space-time abyss. In the next moment, a blood-red ray of light appeared between Dreamcloud's brows. However, it was stopped by a shield of clouds. So the green profound sword returned to Xian's grasp. Dreamcloud gazed at Xian and then he flicked his sleeve. In an instant, the clouds in the surroundings suddenly seethed. In the next moment, all the clouds actually converged together and transformed into a cloud dragon that was over 3 kilometers long. The cloud dragon roared as it soared through the sky, and then it instantly dove down towards Xian. Bang! In an instant, the entire heavens and the earth seethed. Xian raised his head to look at the enormous dragon, and then he slowly closed his eyes. In an instant, countless wisps of blood energy in the surroundings suddenly converged towards him, and in next to no time, an enormous blood-red dragon that was over 10 kilometers long appeared above him. The enormous blood-red dragon raised its head and roared furiously before it shot into the sky. Twin dragons collided head-on. Rumble. An explosion that sounded like a thunderclap resounded in the sky, and then the two enormous dragons exploded apart. The heavens and the earth dimmed down while countless strands of space were obliterated. Nakayama of Scylla's expression changed drastically when he witnessed this scene. Laws. Invical's expression was extremely solemn as well. The battle between Xian and Dreamcloud's son had destroyed this expanse of space, and this meant that the laws left behind by Jun Daolin were about to appear. As expected, as the space in the surroundings was obliterated, a terrifying pressure suddenly appeared above them, and then 2 bolts of blood-red divine lightning appeared above them. The energy of the laws. Dreamcloud's son glanced at the 2 bolts of divine lightning and chuckled. If you were here in person, then I would be 70% afraid of you. But if it's only the energy of the laws. Meanwhile, one of the bolts of divine lightning shot directly towards him. Dreamcloud's son opened his palm, and then he gently guided it upwards. In an instant, countless clouds converged in front of him. Bang! When the blood-colored divine lightning entered the clouds, the entire cloud layer began to seethe. But in the next moment the cloud layer actually imprisoned the lightning. Nakayama of Scylla spoke in a low voice when he witnessed this scene, as expected of the person who was closest to the ancestor. As he spoke, a trace of worry flashed through his eyes as he gazed at Xian who was in the distance. Dreamcloud's strength was absolutely not something that Zhou Xian and the others could compare to. If the person behind Xian didn't show up, then they would absolutely be unable to stop him. But now, the person behind Xian had no intention of showing up. He was slightly annoyed. Damn it, is there no one behind this fellow? In the distance, Xian was locked onto by a bolt of divine lightning as well. When the other bolt of divine lightning attacked Dreamcloud's son, it shot towards Xian as well. As for Xian, he didn't go head-on against it and he directly entered the mysterious abyss of space and time. As soon as he entered that mysterious expanse of space and time, the bolt of divine lightning was stunned. I can't find him. Dreamcloud's son frowned slightly when he saw the bolt of divine lightning stop on the spot. It seems like it can't sense Xian. Right at this moment, the bolt of divine lightning suddenly turned around and shot towards Dreamcloud's son. Since it couldn't sense Xian, then it had to find a target, right? Otherwise, it would have come here for nothing. Moreover, Dreamcloud's son just happened to have violated the laws, so he was the perfect target. Dreamcloud's son's face instantly turned gloomy when he saw the bolt of divine lightning shooting towards him. He came looking for me because he couldn't sense Xian? It didn't cause much harm, but it was extremely insulting. Almar's expression was terrifyingly gloomy. When the bolt of divine lightning arrived in front of him, he suddenly took a step forward, and then he suddenly smashed his fist forward. An expanse of light surged out from his fist like an erupting volcano. Rumble. The bolt of divine lightning blasted his fist onto the spot it was standing on. Right at this moment, Dreamcloud's son's pupils constricted because a sword had arrived at the center of his forehead. Dreamcloud's son didn't dare act carelessly, and he swiftly raised his left arm to block it. Bang! An expanse of blood-red light erupted, and Dreamcloud's sun was pushed over 100 m back. As soon as he stopped moving, his entire body fell into a mysterious spatial abyss. Dreamcloud's sun glanced at the surroundings and he frowned slightly. This spatial abyss. He hadn't even finished speaking when a ray of light suddenly stabbed towards him. A wisp of viciousness flashed through Dreamcloud's sun's eyes, and then he suddenly clenched his right fist and smashed it forward. Bang! The mysterious spatial abyss started seething, and his punch had forcefully stopped Zhou Xian's sword. Zhou Xian's sword had missed, so he immediately retreated. However, the green profound sword in his hand suddenly flew out while he was retreating. Within the spatial abyss, Dreamcloud's sun's eyes narrowed slightly as he raised his right arm to block. Bang! The green profound sword was directly blocked flying. Meanwhile, Dreamcloud's sun suddenly spoke fiercely. "You actually used a spatial abyss to trap me? How laughable! Watch me shatter your spatial abyss." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly smashed his fist forward. Rumble! The spatial abyss started seething, but it didn't shatter. Dreamcloud's sun frowned slightly when he witnessed this scene, and then he smashed his fist forward once more. Bang! The entire mysterious expanse of space trembled violently. However, it still didn't shatter. Dreamcloud's sun's expression was slightly unsightly. He was unwilling to give up and he smashed his fist a few more times. For a time, the entire mysterious expanse of space shook violently like an earthquake. However, no matter how Dreamcloud's sun attacked it, it showed no signs of shattering. A short moment later, Dreamcloud's sun came to an understanding. He was utterly unable to shatter this mysterious expanse of space. When he thought up to here, Dreamcloud's sun gazed at Zhou Xian in the distance. "Zhou Xian, do you still have any trump cards?" Zhou Xian lightly waved the green profound sword in his hand and he didn't speak. At this moment his aura was still rising explosively. Even though he was only at the unheart realm, his aura wasn't inferior to Dreamcloud's sun at all. It was the boost from the energy of his bloodline. Most importantly, Zhou Xian hadn't suffered any backlash. Dreamcloud's sun gazed at Zhou Xian, and then his body suddenly became illusory. In an instant, countless afterimages suddenly appeared in the heavens and the earth, and these afterimages were like a storm that shot violently towards Zhou Xian in the distance. In the distance, Zhou Xian didn't choose to continue attacking. He raised the green profound sword in his right hand, and in the blink of an eye, the green profound sword transformed into a sword shield that blocked in front of him. Rumble! In an instant, numerous explosions resounded incessantly in the heavens and the earth. As these explosions resounded, Zhou Xian retreated repeatedly, and he retreated for over 100 kilometers. Moreover, when the afterimages vanished, Zhou Xian was still there. However, it wasn't easy for him this time, and a wisp of blood slowly seeped out from the corner of his mouth. In the distance, Dreamcloud's sun's expression gradually became solemn. He hadn't imagined that Zhou Xian would actually be able to resist this attack of his. Dreamcloud's sun didn't give it any further thought, and he suddenly rose slowly into the air. In the air, he opened his right palm and then the space above him split apart. In an instant, a blood-red bolt of lightning shot out from within, and it descended into his palm. As soon as it appeared, the heavens and the earth in the surroundings instantly became illusory. This place couldn't endure the might of the blood-red bolt of lightning at all. In the shadows, Nakayama of Scylla and Dreamcloud's expressions had become extremely solemn, and they exchanged glances while their eyes were filled with astonishment. In the distance, Zhou Xian had stopped as well. He held the green profound sword tightly in his right hand, and he seemed to have sensed danger. Meanwhile, Dreamcloud's sun suddenly spoke fiercely, "Zhou Xian, let me see exactly how strong your sword is." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly tossed it forward. The blood-red bolt of lightning shot down violently from the sky. Bang! In an instant, the space in an area of a few million kilometers started burning. Chapter 1982. Along with the appearance of the blood-red divine lightning, Nakayama of Scylla and Invakil, who were hiding in the shadows, retreated explosively. Danger! That was what they felt at this moment. Merely the pressure it emanated caused them to feel the aura of death. In the distance, Zhou Xian raised his head slowly. He opened his palm, and the green profound sword in his hand suddenly trembled violently before transforming into a sword shield that blocked in front of him. He blocked it head-on. In next to no time, the blood-red divine lightning blasted onto the sword shield. Bang! A deafening explosion suddenly resounded. Rumble! Yi Xian instantly retreated over 300 kilometers away. The sword shield was fine, but Yi Xian's entire body had actually split open and a copious amount of blood surged out. Moreover, the blood-red divine lightning actually didn't vanish. Moreover, it had transformed into a human face. The blood-red face suddenly laughed gloomily. That's a good sword. Dream Cloud, you have to give it to me. Dream Cloud spoke indifferently. If you're able to kill him, then this sword is yours. The blood-red face roared with laughter. Remember what you said. As soon as it finished speaking, it suddenly vanished on the spot. Bang! Everywhere the divine lightning passed, space was instantly incinerated and obliterated. The terrifying energy contained within it wasn't something space could endure. In the distance, Yi Xian wiped off the blood on the corners of his mouth, and he held the green profound sword tightly in his right hand. In the next moment he charged forward and stabbed with his sword. It was a head-on collision. The green profound sword stabbed directly onto the divine lightning. At the same time, an expanse of sword light enveloped the divine lightning. Bang! Another explosion resounded like a clap of thunder. In the blink of an eye. Rumble! An expanse of sword light was obliterated. Yi Xian retreated explosively over 30 kilometers away, and he just stopped when the face suddenly appeared in front of him. Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. The blood-red sword light slashed down and tore everything apart. Bang! The sword light shattered and Yi Xian retreated explosively for over 10 kilometers again. The faces of Nakayama, of Scylla and Invicil instantly sank when they witnessed this scene. What exactly is the origin of this divine lightning? It was actually so terrifying. In the distance, the blood-colored face did not follow up with another attack. Stopped and smiled. This sword formation is interesting. It can actually withstand my special power. Cloud Dream Z suddenly smiled and said, Nether Realm. This person is not simple. He might have an inactive realm expert behind him. Yu Jing smiled and said, an inactive realm expert? Forget about this place. Even in the alternate world there were not many inaction realm elites. There are currently only 9 peerless realm elites in the other world, but I know all of them, so... As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. The person behind him is definitely not an inaction realm elite. Even if he is, I'm afraid he's only at the false boundless realm. Pseudo-limitless stage. Hearing this, Yun Meng Zi became silent. The truth was that the pseudo-novelist level was infinitely close to the nothingness level. His half-step nothingness level was actually a bit overstated. Limitless realm. Since ancient times, only a handful of people had been able to reach this level. Meanwhile, Nether Realm smiled and said, so what if he has an inactive realm expert behind him? Isn't my master an inaction realm elite as well? Cloud Dream Z glanced at Nether Realm and smiled. Of course. As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Xian in the distance. Do you need help? Nether Realm looked at Yi Xian in the distance and laughed. No need. Just wait and see. Isn't this person a swordsman? Let me defeat him with my sword. As he spoke, he suddenly turned into a sword. The next moment he turned into a blood-colored sword light and shot out. In an instant the space in his path shattered and was annihilated. Sword. In the distance Yi Xian suddenly looked up. His right hand held the azure profound sword tightly and was about to attack. However, when the sword arrived in front of him, he suddenly put away the azure profound sword. Seeing this, Cloud Dream Z's expression changed. He wanted to stop Nether Realm, but it was too late. Nether Realm sank into the center of Yi Xian's forehead. Boom. Yi Xian's figure trembled violently while an extremely terrifying aura swept out from within him. Nakayama, of Scylla and Invicil were stunned when they witnessed this scene. Is he dead? But it didn't take long for them to notice that Yi Xian wasn't dead. Moreover, Yi Xian's aura was rising madly. Both of them exchanged glances and their eyes were filled with shock. Cloud Dream Z stared fixedly at Yi Xian in the distance, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Meanwhile, a furious howl suddenly resounded from within Qianxi's body. How audacious! How dare you devour me? Devour! Everyone was stunned when they heard Yu Jing. Yi Xian is devouring Yu Jing? Meanwhile, Yu Jing's voice resounded once more. Cloud Dream Z, hurry up and save me. Cloud Dream Z pondered deeply for a moment, and then he vanished on the spot. Xian suddenly raised his head and slashed down with his sword. Bang! An expanse of blood-red light erupted, and then Cloud Dream Z was blasted over 1 kilometer away. Nakayama of Scylla's face fell when he witnessed this scene. Cloud Dream Z is intentionally refusing to save Yu Jing. Invakil nodded. Obviously Cloud Dream Z wants Xian to devour Yu Jing. But what's his objective in doing this? Nakayama of Scylla laughed coldly. Isn't it simple? He wants to form enmity between Xian and the power behind Xian. Or perhaps he wants to use the power behind Xian to deal with Xian. Invakil spoke in a low voice. So he sensed danger from Xian. Nakayama of Scylla laughed bitterly. So long as he isn't blind, then he should be aware that there's definitely an inactive realm expert behind Xian. If this fellow doesn't have such an expert backing him, then how could he possibly be so heaven-defying? Whether it's his bloodline or that sword, they aren't things that an ordinary person should possess. Invakil nodded and then he glanced at Cloud Dream Z. This fellow is very sinister. Nakayama of Scylla spoke indifferently. How could someone who has come this far be an idiot? In the distance Xian's aura rose explosively. Within him Xian roared madly. Lowly creature, how dare you devour me? Do you know who I am? Xian didn't even care about Yu Jing and he continued devouring. Xian roared madly. At this moment Xiao Ta's voice suddenly resounded from within Xian's body. Stop shouting. You're stupid, yet you insist on becoming a sword. Who can you blame? Xian said angrily. Who are you? Xiao Ta spoke indifferently. I am Destiny's Tower. The #1 tower in the universe. Under 3 swords I'm invincible. Above 3 swords I can change. At this point it didn't continue. Xian said angrily. What stupid tower? Hurry up and make him stop. If I die here my master won't let him go. Xiao Ta said indifferently. What? Do you want to fight for a backer? Xian said fiercely. I don't want to talk nonsense with you. If you don't stop him when my master comes down, you'll all die. Shut up. Xiao Ta suddenly said angrily. It's not easy for the young master to stop relying on his father and sister. You bastard, you want to use a backer again. Xian suddenly roared. Lowly creature, stop. The voice slowly weakened. Outside Cloud Dream Z looked at Xian, but he didn't do anything. He just looked at Xian and no one knew what he was thinking. In the distance Xian was still roaring, but at this moment his voice was getting weaker. On the contrary, Xian's aura was getting stronger. Combined with his original bloodline aura, his aura was no weaker than Cloud Dream Z's. Gradually Xian's voice became as soft as a mosquito. Before long his voice disappeared completely. Boom! An extremely terrifying aura suddenly erupted from Xian's body. As this aura erupted, the surrounding space-time boiled. In the distance, Cloud Dream Z narrowed his eyes and clenched his right hand slowly, but he didn't make a move. At this moment Xian suddenly opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, his realm went from the heartless realm to the thoughtless realm. However, it wasn't over yet. His aura was still growing. Before long he went from the thoughtless realm to the corporeal realm. He went up 2 realms in a row. At this moment Cloud Dream Z slowly retreated. Upon seeing this scene Nakayama of Scylla frowned slightly. Did this guy want to escape? Suddenly Cloud Dream Z disappeared from his spot. As soon as Cloud Dream Z disappeared, the space-time above Xian's head trembled slightly. At this moment the entire Dao critical space-time was boiling. It was the entire Dao critical space-time. For a time, countless experts from the Dao world turned to look in Yunjie's direction, and their eyes were filled with terror. Is an inaction realm expert about to appear? In the darkness, Nakayama of Scylla looked up at the sky above Xian, and his expression was extremely unsightly. This aura isn't at the half-step inaction realm at all. An inaction realm expert. It didn't take long for a phantom to appear in the sky. As soon as it appeared, the entire Dao critical space-time started boiling, and then it started to fade. When he saw this, Nakayama of Scylla's expression changed drastically. Is he going to destroy the entire Dao critical space-time? Right at this moment, a blood-red cloud suddenly appeared in the distant sky, and then a bolt of blood-red lightning condensed from within the cloud in the next moment. The laws left behind by Jun Daolin had appeared once more. Meanwhile, the phantom in the sky gradually condensed, and it didn't take long for a middle-aged man to appear in the sky. The middle-aged man wore a white robe and held a horsetail whisk in his right hand. He seemed very sage-like. It wasn't his main body. But even then, his aura was at least a few dozen times stronger than Cloud Dreamzy. It really was like the difference between the heavens and the earth. As soon as the middle-aged man appeared, the bolt of blood-red lightning suddenly vanished on the spot. The middle-aged man remained expressionless as he waved the horsetail whisk in his hand. Bang! An explosion resounded, and then the bolt of blood-red lightning was instantly obliterated. At the same time it vanished as well. The middle-aged man gazed at Zhou Xian with a completely expressionless face. You devoured the nether realm. Zhou Xian didn't speak and he just held his sword tightly. The middle-aged man didn't speak as well. He just waved the horsetail whisk in his hand, and then Zhou Xian wasn't even able to react before he was blasted over 3 kilometers away. Moreover, the middle-aged man had appeared in front of him before he could even stop himself. At this moment Zhou Xian's body was actually gone. The middle-aged man was about to attack when Xiao Ta suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Xian. You're too much of a bully. You hit the young and the old came. How can you bully others like this? The middle-aged man looked at Xiao Ta. We're bullying you. You're not happy? Xiao Ta laughed. I wanted to keep a low profile, but now it seems that I can no longer keep a low profile. The middle-aged man nodded slightly. Come. Xiao Ta said disdainfully. You're not worthy for me to attack. I want to call for help. The middle-aged man, Xiao Ta suddenly trembled. After a moment he suddenly said, Master. I'm calling for you. Hurry up and come out. After a moment there was no movement at all. Xiao Ta hesitated for a moment and then said, Master. I'm calling for you. There was still no movement at all. Xiao Ta couldn't help but curse. Motherf asterisk her, are you not giving me any face? Everyone. Guess will you forgive me? Chapter 1983. Xiao Ta was in a slightly awkward situation. This master is actually ignoring me. How can I get out of this situation now? As if he'd thought of something, Xiao Ta turned around and glanced at Zhou Xian, and he was slightly helpless. Young master, are you really his biological son? Zhou Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man before Xiao Ta spoke abruptly. I'm waiting for you to call for help. Xiao Ta flared up with rage when he heard this and he gazed at the middle-aged man and spoke furiously. My young master has a sword. Do you dare to touch it? As he spoke, Zhou Xian cooperated and opened his palm, and the green profound sword floated slowly towards the middle-aged man. He would carry the burden when he should, and he would absolutely not carry the burden when he shouldn't. The middle-aged man gazed silently at the green profound sword. Xiao Ta laughed coldly. What? You don't dare? This sword was forged by the #1 expert in the entire universe, Big Sister Tianming. Do you dare to touch it? The middle-aged man gazed at Xiao Ta, and a wisp of disdain arose on the corners of his mouth. The #1 expert in the entire universe? How laughable. As he spoke he suddenly grabbed the green profound sword with his right hand. Bang! A strand of terrifying and formidable force suddenly erupted from the green profound sword, but it was instantly suppressed by the middle-aged man in the next moment. The middle-aged man's face was emotionless. Let me see who you are. As soon as he finished speaking he slowly closed his eyes. At the same time the green profound sword started to tremble slightly. Xiao Ta instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he witnessed this scene. I, Xiao Ta, like confident people like you. Zhou Xian stood silently at the side. Xiao Ta couldn't help but turn around to glance at Zhou Xian. He hesitated for a moment before he said, Young master, have you gone mad? Zhou Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man suddenly raised his head and gazed into the depths of the boundless starry sky. A short moment later his pupils constricted. A sword had suddenly stabbed into the middle-aged man's forehead. Bang! In an instant the middle-aged man's body had become ethereal. The middle-aged man's eyes were filled with disbelief. However, this was not the end. In an unknown world far away, on a mountain peak that towered into the clouds, a sword appeared without any prior signs. As the sword appeared, a middle-aged man who sat cross-legged on the mountain peak suddenly raised his head, and a hint of hostility flashed in his eyes. How dare you? As soon as he finished speaking he opened his palm, and a golden mark suddenly floated up slowly from his palm. At the instant that the golden mark floated up, countless strange golden talismans suddenly appeared in the surroundings, and they suddenly released countless beams of golden light that converged into the golden mark. In the next moment, the golden mark shot into the sky and blasted towards the sword. The sword fell straight down. When the sword pierced the golden mark disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, the middle-aged man's pupils constricted. How? Before he could finish his sentence, the sword pierced through his head. Boom. The middle-aged man's body immediately became illusory. The sword suddenly turned into a ray of sword light and disappeared into the boundless horizon. The middle-aged man looked at the horizon in the distance, and his eyes were filled with confusion. Killing the clone, shattering the main body. As soon as he finished speaking, his body disappeared without a trace. Dead. As the middle-aged man disappeared, everyone in the other world was dumbfounded. An inanimate realm expert had died? He died just like that. Whose sword did that belong to? All the experts in the other world were dumbfounded. Before long, an old man appeared where the middle-aged man had died. He looked in front of him with an extremely solemn expression. At this moment, a woman in a red dress suddenly appeared not far away from the old man, and her expression was extremely solemn as well. Both of them were inanimate realm experts. The old man suddenly said softly, "Who is it?" His voice carried a trace of confusion. The woman in the red dress fell silent. Haha. At this moment, loud laughter suddenly sounded from afar. The two of them turned around and saw a middle-aged man in a white robe walking over slowly from afar. The old man narrowed his eyes slightly. "Jun Daolin, what are you laughing at?" Jun Daolin laughed loudly. "We've been searching for a breakthrough our entire lives, but the 9 of us have cultivated for tens of millions of years, and none of us has been able to reach a higher level. Today we can see an expert above inanimate realm in action. Shouldn't we be happy?" The old man and the woman in the red dress fell silent. Happy. Just as Jun Daolin had said, the 9 of them had been stuck in the Anika realm for a few tens of millions of years, and they hadn't been able to take another step forward. There were many times when they even wondered if the Anika realm was the end of the martial Dao. But now that sword told them that inanimate realm was not the end. The old man and the woman in the red dress suddenly laughed. Hope. At this moment, hope suddenly rose in their hearts. Inanimate realm was not the end of martial arts, which meant that they had a goal and motivation to strive for. The woman in the red dress suddenly looked at Jun Daolin. "Jun Daolin, do you know who did that?" Jun Daolin laughed. "I don't know." The woman in the red dress glanced at Jun Daolin and did not ask anything else. But her instincts told her that Jun Daolin knew. Meanwhile, another woman walked over from afar. It was Daoling. Daoling smiled. "I never expected that Qi would actually perish just like that." Qi was the middle-aged man who'd been killed earlier. The woman in the red dress gazed at Daoling. "Daoling, do you know who did it?" Daoling blinked. "I don't." The woman in the red dress frowned slightly, and then she glanced at Daoling and Jun Daolin. "Both of you definitely know." Jun Daolin smiled. "Honglian, don't worry about who it was. Actually, you should be asking why that person killed Qi." Honglian was about to speak when the old man spoke abruptly. "No matter what the reason is, old man, choose to keep a low profile after today. Farewell." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Jun Daolin glanced at the old man and smiled. That old geezer Imoku is really interesting. As expected of someone who's lived the longest. Imoku might not be the strongest amongst the 9 of them, but he was definitely the one who'd lived the longest. Honglian glanced at Daoling and Jun Daolin, and then she turned around and left. Only Daoling and Jun Daolin remained here. Daoling spoke softly. "I never expected her to be so strong." Jun Daolin smiled. "You know her?" Daoling nodded. "My clone that I left at Dao border has seen her. At that time my clone was instantly killed as well." Jun Daolin's smile gradually disappeared. The Scarlet Earth doppelganger went to Daobi to kill that young man called Zhou Xian. As he spoke, he looked at Daoling. "It was the person behind Zhou Xian who killed him." Daoling nodded. Jun Daolin fell silent. Actually, the reason they didn't hide it from each other was because they were in an alliance. It wasn't possible to fight one-on-one here. It was very difficult to kill a person in a one-on-one battle, but it was different if it was 2-on-1. Thus, basically everyone would form an alliance here and have a teammate. The two of them came from the same place, so it was logical for them to form an alliance. At this moment Jun Daolin shook his head and sighed, that Qi Di died in such a sullen way. He didn't even see the other person. Dao Ling smiled and said, that little guy might come here soon. Jun Daolin looked at Dao Ling. Are you familiar with him? Dao Ling's lips curled up slightly. He recognized me as his sister. Jun Daolin's expression froze and after a moment he gave a thumbs up. Awesome. Dao Ling laughed out loud. Dao Border. As the middle-aged man disappeared completely, Xiao Ta heaved a sigh of relief. Sister Tianming is still the most reliable. As if thinking of something, Xiao Ta suddenly turned around and looked at Yi Xian. The middle-aged man's soul wasn't erased, but absorbed by the Xianxia sword. To be precise, it was the middle-aged man's soul that was absorbed by the Xianxia sword that was controlled by Yi Xian. At this moment, Xiao Ta was completely sure that Yi Xian was awake. Of course he didn't dare to ask, nor did he dare to expose him. This young master wasn't a kind person. If he was naughty now he might be beaten up by him pretending to be crazy. And for nothing. In the dark, Nakayama of Scylla and Invakil were extremely excited. They made their move. The big boss behind Yi Xian finally made his move. And the other party directly erased the clone of the inanimate realm expert. He was undoubtedly an inanimate realm expert. Invakil suddenly said with a trembling voice, "We won the bet." Nakayama of Scylla laughed, "Of course." As if thinking of something he frowned slightly, "Be careful of one person." Hearing this, Invakil also frowned. Yunmingzi. Ever since the inanimate realm expert appeared this guy completely disappeared. At this moment Nakayama of Scylla said, "Now he probably won't dare to show himself and target young Master Yi. But he might play dirty in the dark." At this point he seemed to have thought of something and shook his head with a smile. With young Master Ye's wit he probably won't be afraid of him playing dirty. Invakil smiled faintly. That's true. In the distance the green profound sword in front of Yi Xian suddenly trembled violently. The next moment, an extremely terrifying aura erupted from the green profound sword. As the aura appeared, the time and space around the green profound sword began to boil. Before long the boiling time and space began to disappear bit by bit. When they saw this, Nakayama of Scylla and Invakil's expressions became extremely solemn. The sword was about to break through. The sword had already devoured the souls of too many experts and just now, it devoured the clone of an inanimate realm expert. Now it was finally about to break through. Not far away from the green profound sword Yi Xian stood quietly. The power of his bloodline was still boiling, but he did not go around killing people. Regarding this, Small Pagoda was extremely curious. After the young master activated his bloodline he was completely different from his master. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly looked up. He opened his palm and the green profound sword appeared in his hand. Boom! The green profound sword and Yi Xian erupted with a terrifying aura at the same time. They broke through together. Chapter 1984. He'd broken through. Yi Xian had attained the soulless realm. Moreover, his aura was rising explosively. Moreover, the aura of the green profound sword was rising explosively as well. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to attain the Daoless realm from the soulless realm. Once he attained the Daoless realm he'd started to suppress himself. Of course, it was impossible for him to attain the Daoless realm from the Daoless realm. After a long time, Yi Xian's aura gradually calmed down. At this moment he opened his eyes slowly. The moment he opened his eyes, the space and time in front of him turned into a sea of blood. Nakayama of Scylla and Invakil exchanged glances when they witnessed this scene, and there was a trace of shock in their eyes. Nakayama of Scylla spoke softly, "This fellow has risen to the Daoless realm from a single battle. Coupled with his invincible bloodline and sword, he'll definitely be the #1 expert beneath the Daoless realm from now on." The #1 expert beneath the Daoless realm. Yi Xian hadn't attained the Daoless realm, but he'd already been able to go head-on against an extraordinary expert like Yunmingzi. Now that he'd attained the Daoless realm, who else could be a match for him besides Daoless realm experts? Suddenly, the blood-red color in Yi Xian's eyes gradually vanished, and it didn't take long for the blood-red space around him to return to normal as well. Yi Xian opened his palm and the green profound sword appeared in his hand. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he gazed at the sword in his hand. Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, you've returned to normal?" Yi Xian smiled, "Yes." Xiao Ta hesitated for a moment before he said, "Young master, why were you able to maintain your consciousness after activating your bloodline?" Yi Xian fell silent. Actually, he didn't know the answer as well. After he fully activated his bloodline, he hadn't completely lost all reason as he usually would. He'd entered an extremely profound state, and he was slightly unable to control himself while in that state. However, his mind felt very clear. It was like he'd drunk alcohol. He was clearly drunk. However, his mind was still clear. He didn't know why he was like that. Could it be that his bloodline was mutating? Thinking of this, Yi Xian shook his head and stopped thinking about this question. In any case, this was a good thing. When he met his father in the future, he could ask him about it. At this time, Nakayama of Silla and Invakil appeared in front of Yi Xian. Nakayama of Silla looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Congratulations, little friend." Yi Xian smiled and said, "I, Yi Xian, will never forget the two seniors' kindness of helping me." Nakayama of Silla hesitated, then said, "This?" Yi Xian smiled and asked, "What's wrong?" Nakayama of Silla chuckled. "It's like this, my young friend. Our goal in life is to reach the boundless realm, but unfortunately our talent is limited. I'm afraid it's impossible for us to reach the boundless realm on our own." So, he knew very well that unforgettable memories were all fake. Especially this slippery guy, he might forget about it the moment he turned around. He had to get the benefits first. Hearing Nakayama of Silla's words, Yi Xian was speechless. This guy wanted Dao Ling's inheritance. He didn't refuse. With a point of his finger, two rays of white light directly entered Nakayama of Silla and Invakil's forehead. Boom, boom. Nakayama of Silla and Invakil's bodies trembled slightly. After a moment, Nakayama of Silla opened his eyes. He looked at Yi Xian and bowed slightly. "Thank you, little friend. Dao Ling's inheritance." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Whether you can reach the boundless realm or not depends on yourselves." Nakayama of Silla smiled and said, "Understood." Although they had Dao Ling's inheritance, as Yi Xian said, whether they could reach the boundless realm or not depended on themselves. It didn't mean that they would definitely be able to reach the boundless realm after obtaining the inheritance. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Seniors, I still have some things to take care of. Another day, I'll visit again." Nakayama of Silla smiled and said, "Little friend, please wait." Saying so, he took out a storage ring and handed it to Yi Xian. Yi Xian was a little surprised. "This is..." Nakayama of Silla smiled and said, "Young Master Yi, this is some divine vein crystals that we plundered from Yunjia and the law enforcement sect. It should be helpful to young Master Yi." Yi Xian glanced at the mustard seed ring and took it right away. Then he said with a smile, "Seniors, goodbye." Saying so, he turned into a sword light and disappeared into the distant horizon. After Yi Xian left, Invakil said softly, "Yunjia is gone. The law enforcement sect is also gone." Saying so, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Nakayama of Silla laughed. "Now the entire Daolin nation belongs to you and me." Saying so, he looked at Invakil. "Invakil, what do you plan to do next?" Invakil thought for a moment and then said, "I'll listen to you." Nakayama of Silla. After Yi Xian left, he directly used the green profound sword to travel back to Azure State. In the palace, Tuoba Yen suddenly looked up. When she saw Yi Xian, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Yi Xian walked to Tuoba Yen and said with a smile, "I was delayed by some things." Tuoba Yen shook her head slightly. "It's good that you're back." Saying so, she slowly hugged Yi Xian's waist and buried her head in Yi Xian's chest. Without saying a word, she gently hugged Yi Xian. In fact, how could she not be worried during this period of time? Yi Xian gently stroked Tuoba Yen's long hair and said softly, "How have you been recently?" Tuoba Yen suddenly looked up at Yi Xian. "Oh no." Yi Xian was stunned. Tuoba Yen said in a deep voice, "A mysterious force has appeared in Azure State. This force has been searching for young women like crazy. Now the entire Azure State is in a state of panic." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Mysterious force?" Tuoba Yen nodded. "This force is called Heaven Sect. They appeared half a month ago. As for their origins, I've sent people to investigate, but they couldn't find anything." Yi Xian was about to speak when he suddenly turned to look outside the hall. In the distant sky above the hall, an aura suddenly appeared. The next moment, an old man in Daoist robes slowly descended. Tuoba Yen said in a deep voice, They're here. Outside the hall, countless soldiers swarmed over. Tuoba Yen suddenly waved his right hand, and the soldiers immediately retreated. At this moment the old man in Daoist robes walked into the hall. He looked at Tuoba Yen and smiled. Country King Tuoba is indeed a smart man. Tuoba Yen smiled. From Heaven Sect? The old man in Daoist robes smiled. Old man, Heaven Sect's Grand Elder, Xiaoqi Country King Tuoba, I won't waste any more time. I've come for one thing, and that is my Heaven Sect's sect master wants to take you as a concubine. Take a concubine? Xian was stunned. The next moment he looked at the old man in Daoist robes, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Not only was Tuoba Yen not angered by the Daoist-robed old man's words, he even smiled. She glanced at Xian and then at the old man in Daoist robes. Take me as a concubine? The old man in Daoist robes nodded. Yes. Tuoba Yen blinked. Do you know whose woman I am? The old man in Daoist robes frowned slightly. You have a man? Tuoba Yen nodded and pointed at Xian. He's my man. The old man in Daoist robes glanced at Xian and said with a smile, Isn't that simple? He's dead. You don't have one, do you? As he spoke, he flicked his sleeves and sent a blast of energy towards Xian. When the blast of energy arrived in front of Xian, it disappeared without a trace. The old man in Daoist robes frowned slightly when he saw that. Young master, you do have some skill. Xian was speechless. The old man in Daoist robes sneered. He suddenly threw a punch and a fist print tore through the air towards Xian. However, when the fist print arrived before Xian, it vanished without a trace. The old man in Daoist robes narrowed his eyes. How did you do that? Xian spread his hands. I didn't do anything. The old man in Daoist robes' expression gradually turned cold. Are you going to pretend in front of me? Xian was speechless. The old man in Daoist robes suddenly roared furiously. The next moment his right hand grabbed at Xian from afar. This grab caused the space where Xian was to start tearing. Space tearing, not space-time tearing. The space around Xian was torn apart, but he was completely fine. A trace of disbelief flashed across the old man's eyes. How did you do that? Xian was somewhat innocent. I didn't do anything. The old man in Daoist robes stared at Xian. Are you at the primordial realm? Primordial realm? Xian was stunned. What's the primordial realm? The old man in Daoist robes said in a deep voice. You don't even know the primordial realm of the five-dimensional universe. The five-dimensional universe. Sister Nian's universe. Xian was somewhat speechless. Damn it. There are too many realms. I actually can't even remember them. I wonder which idiot did this. How embarrassing. Meanwhile, the old man in Daoist robes suddenly spoke in a deep voice. Who are you? Xian looked at the old man in Daoist robes. He hesitated for a moment before he said, Xian. Have you heard of me? The old man in Daoist robes frowned slightly. Xian? Xian nodded. The old man in Daoist robes pondered deeply for a moment before he said, I've never heard of you. Xian flared up with rage. Damn it. You're from the five-dimensional universe, yet you've actually never heard of me, Xian? Meanwhile, the old man suddenly vanished on the spot. In the next moment, an afterimage flashed by. Xian looked in front of him and a powerful force shot towards his face. Xian blocked it with his arm. Bang! Along with a muffled explosion, the old man was blasted out of the hall. As soon as he stopped moving, his body shattered into pieces. Moreover, even his soul had become almost translucent. Xian was quite speechless when he witnessed this scene. He really hadn't exerted any strength in that instant, and he'd merely blocked it for a moment. However, he hadn't expected that the old man would actually be weak to such an extent that his body had shattered with just a light touch. Tuoba Yen glanced at Xian and he was extremely shocked. She knew that Xian was very strong, but she didn't know exactly how strong Xian was. At this moment, a casual action from Xian had actually almost destroyed the old man's soul. The old man in Daoist robes outside the hall was completely stunned. What's wrong with me? Where's my body? A short while later he finally returned to his senses. He gazed at Xian and spoke resentfully, Just you wait. As he spoke he opened his palm and then a cloud arrow suddenly shot into the sky and shot into the clouds. Call for help. Xian blinked and then laughed. Come, call as you wish. I'm invincible, so do as you wish. Xiao Ta. P.S. Recently both adults and children have caught a cold and children have caught a cold. They can't sleep and they keep throwing a tantrum, causing both of us to be unable to sleep. Most importantly, both of us have caught a cold as well. So, sorry for the late update yesterday. Because I only slept at 4 or 5 yesterday. Sorry again. Chapter 1985. I'm invincible, so do whatever you want. Tuoba Yen was slightly stunned by Yi Xian's words and then she grinned. There was adoration and a trace of adoration in her eyes as she gazed at Yi Xian. This little man of the past had become unfathomable. The black-robed old man was first stunned when he heard Yi Xian, and then he roared with laughter. His laughter rumbled through the sky. Yi Xian gazed at the black-robed old man and smiled silently. Meanwhile, the black-robed old man suddenly pointed a finger at Yi Xian. You're invincible? You actually dare to say such absurd words. This old man has never seen such a thick skin on your face. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, a few dozen figures suddenly appeared in the horizon. The black-robed old man was overjoyed when he saw the figures. They're here. As soon as he finished speaking, a few dozen figures had appeared within the palace, and they were led by a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man had his hands behind his back, and there was a dignified air between his brows. The black-robed old man hurriedly said, Sect Master. The sect master of the heavenly sect, Mu Long. Mu Long glanced at the black-robed old man, and his eyes instantly narrowed when he noticed that only his soul remained. He gazed at Yi Xian. You did this. Yi Xian smiled, yes. Mu Long gazed at Yi Xian. Do you know that he's a member of my heavenly sect? Yi Xian smiled, I do. Mu Long clenched his right fist, and then he suddenly charged forward and slammed his fist at Yi Xian. Space was torn apart. He who attacked first had the advantage. When Mu Long's fist arrived over 10 inches away from Yi Xian, an invisible force suddenly obstructed him. Mu Long was stunned and then he was horrified. He was about to retreat, but a powerful force pushed him over 1 kilometer back. Moreover, his body had been obliterated when he stopped moving. The experts of the heavenly sect were stunned by this scene. His body is gone. Their invincible sect master's physical body was gone? At this moment, the black-robed old man seemed to have lost his soul. His soul retreated rapidly as if he'd seen a ghost. Tuoba Yen held Yi Xian's hand lightly and said softly, You've actually become so formidable. Yi Xian blinked. Not only am I powerful in the day, but I'm even more powerful at night. Tuoba Yen was slightly taken aback. In the next moment she came back to her senses and rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. Her cheeks blushed and she looked extremely beautiful. Yi Xian laughed and wrapped his left arm around Tuoba Yan's waist. In the distance, the curtain suddenly said with a trembling voice, Why, you're a legendary primordial realm expert? Yi Xian smiled and said, No. Mu Lang glared at Yi Xian. A moment later he roared, Invite the ancestor. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and a token suddenly flew out from his hand. In the next moment the token shot into the clouds. Boom. The clouds in the sky began to boil. Yi Xian rubbed his nose, somewhat speechless. At this moment Tuoba Yen said softly, They're summoning the ancestor. Seeing the worry in Tuoba Yen's eyes, Yi Xian smiled and said, Don't be afraid. Your man is invincible in this place. Tuoba Yen blinked. What about other places? Yi Xian laughed. I'm invincible in other places too. In any case, bragging was not against the law. So what if he bragged a little? At this moment an old man suddenly appeared in the clouds. Seeing this old man, Mu Lang hurriedly bowed deeply. Greetings, ancestral master. Ancestral master. Behind Mu Lang, the heavenly sect experts all knelt and bowed. After the old man appeared, he looked around expressionlessly. What a weak world. With that he looked down at Mu Lang. What's the matter? Mu Lang pointed at Yi Xian in the distance. Ancestral master, this person wants to destroy my heavenly sect. The old man looked at Yi Xian. When he saw Yi Xian he frowned slightly. Why does he look so familiar? Familiar. Yi Xian smiled. I once stayed in the 5-dimensional universe. 5-dimensional universe. The old man frowned. As he looked at Yi Xian he felt that Yi Xian looked more and more familiar. At this moment Mu Lang hurriedly said, Ancestral master, this person not only wants to destroy my heavenly sect, but also looks down on you. Ancestral Master, please kill this person. The old man ignored Mu Lang. He looked at Yi Xian again. What's your surname? Yi Xian smiled. Yi, the old man frowned slightly. After pondering for a moment, his pupils suddenly shrank. He said in a trembling voice, Your Excellency is Yi Xian, young Master Yi? Yi Xian laughed. You know me? Hearing Yi Xian's words, the old man's body trembled. Then, in front of everyone's eyes, his legs softened and he directly knelt down. The experts of the heavenly sect were stunned. What's going on? The old man's face was deathly pale. His eyes were filled with fear. Young Master Yi. I didn't know it was young Master Yi. I offended young Master Yi, please forgive me. After saying that, he continuously kowtowed. Seeing this scene, the experts of the heavenly sect were petrified. Young Master Yi? Who is this young Master Yi? Why have we never heard of him? Yi Xian looked at the kneeling old man and smiled. You know me? The old man nodded and said in a trembling voice, Young Master Yi once protected the entire five-dimensional universe. Who doesn't know him? In the five-dimensional universe there were two guardian gods. One was the five-dimensional Tendo Moon Yen Yen, and the other was Yi Xian, young Master Yi. At this moment the old man's fear reached its peak. At this time Yi Xian suddenly said, Why don't I know you? The old man smiled bitterly. It's normal that young Master Yi doesn't know me. I'm just a nobody. I've never seen young Master Yi in person, only his statue. After saying that, he hurriedly kowtowed. Young Master Yi, my disciples don't know young Master Yi. They offended young Master Yi. Please forgive them. Yi Xian laughed. Forgive them? I thought you were a smart person. But it seems I was wrong. If they offended me, I'm a good-tempered person and won't bother with them. But they offended my woman and you want me to let them go? Interesting. Hearing this, the old man's expression changed. He hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, I'll kill them now. After saying that, he suddenly turned around and slapped out with his palm. Boom. Before Mu Lang and the others could react, they were directly erased. After killing Mu Lang and the others, the old man said, Young Master Yi, from this moment on, I will disband the heavenly sect. Yi Xian suddenly waved his hand. Boom. The old man was directly erased. Mercy? He wouldn't be merciful. From another perspective, if he didn't have the strength, then what would have happened to Tuoba Yen today? Being merciful to one's enemy was extremely stupid. Meanwhile, a few people suddenly rushed over from afar. Yi Xian was slightly stunned when he saw these people. He knew all of them. It was Mo Yunqi and the others. Jiangjiu was here as well. Jiangjiu was still dressed in battle armor, and he seemed valiant and formidable. Mo Yunqi was the first to rush over when he saw Yi Xian. He roared with laughter and said, Bandit Yi, I thought you died outside. As he spoke, he hugged Yi Xian tightly. Yi Xian smiled and said, My life is tough. Mo Yunqi roared with laughter. I know your life is tough and ordinary people can't kill you at all. Yi Xian said seriously, Nonsense. Someone who can kill me hasn't even been born yet. Mo Yunqi's expression froze. In the next moment he shook his head. Your skin has thickened again. Yi Xian roared with laughter. In the next period of time, everyone gathered together. Mo Yunqi and Bai Zhe were drunk, but Yi Xian wasn't. He arrived outside the hall and Tuoba Yen was sitting before the stone steps. Yi Xian walked over to Tuoba Yen's side, and Tuoba Yen asked softly, You're leaving? Yi Xian nodded. Tuoba Yen didn't speak. Yi Xian opened his palm, and a wisp of sword qi entered Tuoba Yen's body. This sword qi will remain in your body. As long as the opponent's strength doesn't surpass mine, you can use this sword qi to instantly kill them. This sword qi won't disappear. Tuoba Yen nodded slightly. Alright. Yi Xian opened his palm and a spatial ring appeared before Tuoba Yen. There are some divine supreme crystals and some cultivation techniques in this spatial ring. Cultivate according to them and your strength will increase greatly. Tuoba Yen smiled. Anything else? Yi Xian shook his head. No. Tuoba Yen put away the spatial ring. She said softly, Let's go. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, I'll be going then. Tuoba Yen wanted to say something but hesitated. At this moment Yi Xian vanished. Tuoba Yen was slightly taken aback when she saw Yi Xian vanish. She looked at the distant horizon, and her gaze gradually became infatuated. After an unknown period of time, Tuoba Yen retracted her gaze and her expression dimmed. At this moment, a sword chi suddenly landed in front of Tuoba Yen. In the next moment the sword chi dispersed, and Yi Xian appeared before Tuoba Yen. Tuoba Yen was stunned. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. "I'm not leaving tonight." Tuoba Yen suddenly hugged Yi Xian and said in a trembling voice, "Kiss me." Yi Xian, that night it was an ecstasy. The next day, early in the morning, a sword chi shot into the sky from the imperial palace. In the blink of an eye, the sword chi disappeared into the horizon. In a certain hall, Tuoba Yen suddenly opened her eyes on the bed. She turned to look, and when she saw that Yi Xian had disappeared, she fell silent for a moment and then smiled. A moment later Tuoba Yen got up, but as soon as her feet touched the ground her legs went limp and she almost fell. In a large hall, Mo Yunqi sat up. He shook his head and the alcohol immediately disappeared. He turned to the side and saw Bai Zhe lying like a dead pig nearby. Mo Yunqi shook his head. He was about to call out to Bai Zhe when Bai Zhe suddenly opened his eyes and sat up. He looked into the distance. "Gone?" Mo Yunqi nodded. "Yes." Bai Zhe nodded slightly. "Then let's go." With that he got up and left. But soon he opened his palm and there was a spatial ring in his palm. He was stunned when he saw this spatial ring. Mo Yunqi also opened his palm, and there was also a spatial ring in his palm. Obviously they were left behind by Yi Xian. Mo Yunqi and Bai Zhe exchanged glances, and Mo Yunqi shook his head with a smile. This guy. Chapter 1986. After leaving the Qingzhou province, Yi Xian arrived at the fifth dimension. At this time the fifth dimension was very prosperous. Not only that, the fifth dimension was in a unified state. Fifth Dimension Alliance. This was a force established by Yi Xian. Now, although Yi Xian was not here, this force had become the #1 force in the fifth dimension. And the main people in charge of this fifth dimension alliance were Guan Yin, Yi Jiming, High Priest A Mu, and the others who had followed Yi Xian in the past. Fifth Dimension Hall. In front of the hall there were two statues. One of them was of the fifth dimension Tendo Munyanyan and the other was of Yi Xian. If not for Munyanyan and Yi Xian, the entire fifth dimension would have disappeared. Yi Xian was not only the leader of the fifth dimension alliance, but also the protector of the fifth dimension. Fifth Dimension City. The current fifth dimension city could be said to be the largest and most prosperous city in the fifth dimension. After Yi Xian left, under the leadership of Mu Guanyin and the others, the fifth dimension city expanded by more than 10 times. Inside the city there were forces from all over the fifth dimension. On this day a man walked into the fifth dimension city. This man was Yi Xian. He did not directly go to find Guan Yin and the others. He wanted to see the current fifth dimension first. He naturally did not forget about the fifth dimension. In the past he had promised Sister Nian that as long as Yi Xian was here he would always protect the fifth dimension. After entering the fifth dimension city, a feeling of vastness spontaneously arose. Compared to before, the current fifth dimension city was much bigger. Just the width of the street was more than 300 zhang. The street was bustling with people coming and going. It was very lively. On both sides of the street there were many shops. Inside the shops, the shop assistants were shouting with all their might. On the road Yi Xian smiled. Here he could feel the life of the human world. In a place like the Dao boundary realm there was no such feeling. That was because the people there all pursued the great Dao and longevity. In that kind of place there was only cultivation, plundering and being plundered. In the five-dimensional universe, the majority of people only pursued survival. Actually, this was pretty good. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and continued forward. After a while Yi Xian felt a little bored. He had been waiting for someone to recognize him, but no one recognized him along the way. There was a statue of him outside the city. Why didn't these people recognize him? Moreover, the security in this city couldn't be better. Along the way he didn't even meet a single bad guy. Damn it. If there were no bad guys, how could he act cool? A hero saving a damsel in distress would be good too. After walking for a while, there was still no one who recognized him, nor were there any bullies taking liberties with innocent girls. Yi Xian felt a little bored. Just as he was about to look for Guan Yin and Yi Jiming, a sudden noise came from afar. Yi Xian's eyes lit up and he hurriedly walked over. Yi Xian came to the front of a shop. This shop was very big, it could be said to be the biggest shop in the vicinity. It could accommodate hundreds of people. At this moment, there were already people gathered around the shop. There were some antiques displayed in the shop. At this moment, a young man was facing a woman. The young man wore a luxurious robe and held a folding fan in his hand. One look and it was obvious that he was not an ordinary person. The woman opposite him wore a simple white dress. She had delicate features and a trace of arrogance on her face. The young man's face was a little gloomy. Wu Ling, I saw this item first. Wu Ling said calmly, you think it's yours? You saw it first but I paid first. The young man's face became gloomy. Wu Ling, don't think that just because you're from the Wu clan, you can pester endlessly. Wu Ling, said calmly, Guanjing, others might be afraid of your Spirit of Yin clan, but my Wu clan isn't. At the side, the shop owner was in a difficult position. These two people were not people he could offend. At this moment, Guanjing suddenly said, Wu Ling, I'm telling you this item is mine. Wu Ling's lips curled into a disdainful smile. But just you? Do you think that just because you're from Lady Guanyin's clan my Wu clan will be afraid of you? Guanjing said calmly, isn't the reason you're so arrogant because you're from the Wu clan's high priest's clan? Hearing the two people's words, Yi Xian frowned. Although the fifth dimension was very prosperous and peaceful, there were still many problems in the dark. After all, the fifth dimension alliance didn't just have the human race, there were many other races. These races were all in the fifth dimension alliance, so there would definitely be conflicts of all sizes. At this moment, Wu Ling looked at the shop owner. Who are you selling it to? Guanjing looked at the shop owner as well. The shop owner instantly smiled bitterly. He couldn't afford to offend these two people. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly walked out. He glanced at Guanjing and Wu Ling before looking at the shop owner. Who saw this item first? The shop owner hesitated for a moment before saying, both of you saw it. Yi Xian smiled. There's always a first-come, first-served rule, right? The shop owner glanced at Yi Xian before sighing in a low voice. Young master, don't get involved in this matter. Yi Xian was about to speak when Wu Ling suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Who are you? Yi Xian looked at Wu Ling and smiled. From your conversation just now, I found out that the person who saw this item first was this young master Guanjing, right? Wu Ling stared at Yi Xian. He saw it first but I paid first. Yi Xian looked at the item that the two people were fighting over. It was a black piece of metal. He picked it up and sized it up. In his eyes it was trash, but in a place like the fifth dimension it was still pretty good. Yi Xian thought for a moment before opening his palms. Two swords appeared in his hands. With a thought, the two swords floated in front of Guanjing and Wu Ling. The two of you don't need to fight over this piece of metal. I'll give you a sword. The quality of this sword is definitely above this piece of metal. What do you think? The shop owner looked deeply at Yi Xian. Then he frowned. Why did this person look so familiar? Guanjing glanced at the sword before him, hesitated for a moment and then said, Brother, I don't want this sword and I don't want that piece of metal as well. Obviously he'd noticed how extraordinary Yi Xian was. Yi Xian grinned. It's fine. I'll give it to you. Just keep it. Guanjing hesitated for a moment before he said, Thank you. As he spoke he put his sword away. Yi Xian gazed at Wu Ling. Wu Ling gazed at Yi Xian and laughed coldly. Why should I give you face? Who do you think you are? Yi Xian frowned when he heard this. Meanwhile Wu Ling flicked Yi Xian's sword away. Moreover, she even swept the piece of metal away. She walked over to stand before Yi Xian and looked Yi Xian in the eyes. Why are you frowning? Are you displeased? Yi Xian smiled and said, I've finally noticed. You're looking for trouble on purpose. Wu Ling smiled and said, I'm looking for trouble on purpose. What? Do you want to hit me? Yi Xian suddenly raised his hand and slapped her. Slap. Everyone hadn't even recovered from their shock when Wu Ling was slapped to the street. Everyone was stunned. Hit. Wu Ling is a member of the Wu clan. Why does the Wu clan need anyone? The high priest of the Wu clan, Mu, is the managing elder of the Fifth Dimension Alliance, and his authority is monstrous. Guanjing glanced at Yi Xian with a trace of curiosity and vigilance in his eyes. Meanwhile, the owner said with a trembling voice, Young master, she's from the Wu clan. Yi Xian said indifferently, What about the Wu clan? The owner smiled bitterly. Young master, do you know the high priest of the Wu clan, Mu? Yi Xian said with a smile, Of course I do. The owner hesitated for a moment before saying, "Then do you know that the High Priest is an elder of our Fifth Dimension Alliance, and his authority is monstrous?" After saying this he paused and said, "Most importantly, the protector of our Fifth Dimension Alliance Master Yi is the High Priest's shaman attendant." Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment Wu Ling suddenly said with resentment, "You dare to hit me?" Yi Xian looked at Wu Ling and was about to say something when the sound of hooves came from the distance. In the next instant the crowd on both sides of the street dispersed and soon more than 50 cavalrymen wearing black armor rushed over. Seeing this, the owner next to Yi Xian said with a trembling voice, "Young master, these are the Wu clan cavalrymen." Wu clan cavalrymen. At this moment the group of cavalrymen rushed to the front of the shop, and the leader was a young man. When he saw the red and swollen handprint on Wu Ling's face, his expression immediately became sinister. "But who did this?" His voice was like the roar of a wild beast. Wu Ling stood up and pointed at Yi Xian, saying resentfully, "Elder brother, it was this human, this lowly human." Lowly human? Yi Xian frowned slightly. The Wu clan young man looked at Yi Xian. "You did this?" Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Yes." Killing intent flashed in the eyes of the Wu clan young man. "Who gave you the guts?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly dashed forward and threw a punch at Yi Xian. However, this punch missed. This was because Yi Xian had already retreated several meters away. Seeing this, Guanjing's eyes flashed with shock. This Wu clan young man's strength was at the origin realm. After his punch missed, the Wu clan young man was slightly stunned. He looked at Yi Xian and narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" Yi Xian was about to speak when the Wu clan young man suddenly said fiercely, "No matter who you are, if you dare to touch a member of my Wu clan will annihilate your entire family." As soon as he finished speaking, he dashed forward again and threw a punch at Yi Xian. This punch was even faster than before and it was even more powerful. However, just as he punched, a hand directly slapped his face. But, with the crisp sound of a slap, the young man was sent flying. Everyone was dumbfounded. Yi Xian looked at the Wu clan young man. Just as he was about to speak, the young man suddenly roared, "Kill! Kill him!" After saying this, the Wu clan cavalryman beside him directly charged at Yi Xian. Seeing this, Yi Xian's eyes gradually became cold. Chapter 1987. When the cavalrymen were about to arrive in front of Yi Xian, a strange scene appeared abruptly. The cavalrymen seemed as if they'd been frozen on the spot. At the same time, every single one of their arms flew into the air. In an instant, countless strands of blood sprayed out, and it was an extremely bloody scene. Everyone in the surroundings was astounded when they witnessed this scene. Guanjing gazed at Yi Xian with disbelief, and his figure was trembling. At this moment, the owner of the shop was astounded to the extreme as well, and cold sweat ceaselessly flowed down his face. On the other hand, Wu Ling was petrified on the spot. Yi Xian gazed at the young man from the Wu clan who was similarly astounded. "You want to annihilate my entire clan?" The young man from the Wu clan stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "Who exactly are you?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Do you know why I haven't killed you?" The young man from the Wu clan suddenly opened his palm, and then a shaman command token suddenly shot into the sky. He was calling for help. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled when he witnessed this scene. "Do you really not recognize me?" The young man from the Wu clan stared at Yi Xian, and then he frowned after a short moment. Why does he feel slightly familiar? Right at this moment, the horizon in the distance suddenly trembled violently. In the next moment, an old man strode through the air towards them. An expert from the Wu clan. The young man from the Wu clan was instantly overjoyed when he saw the old man, and he hurriedly said, "Grand Elder." The Grand Elder of the Wu clan. After the Grand Elder of the Wu clan arrived here, his expression instantly turned gloomy when he saw the severed arms of those cavalrymen from the Wu clan. He gazed at Yi Xian, and he instantly seemed as if he'd been struck by lightning when he saw Yi Xian, and his mind went blank. The young man from the Wu clan was just about to speak when the Wu clan's Grand Elder suddenly turned around and slapped him. Slap. The spectators watched as the young man from the Wu clan's body was directly blasted into pieces. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? Guanjing looked at Yi Xian, and as he watched he seemed to have thought of something. His pupils constricted and his body started to tremble violently. Soon he took out a voice transmission talisman and crushed it. It wasn't just Guanjing. The shop owner had also noticed something. He crushed a sound-transmitting talisman to inform the owner behind him. Some of the spectators in the surroundings who were originally watching the show immediately withdrew their transmission talismans and crushed them. Not long after, the entire fifth dimension city flared up. Countless powerful auras soared into the sky from all directions, then rushed towards a certain direction. Fifth dimensional hall. Guan Yin suddenly put down the scroll in her hand. In the next moment, her pupils constricted abruptly. Then she crushed the scroll in her hand, stood up and walked out of the hall. Everyone in the hall was dumbfounded. But very quickly, everyone seemed to have received some sort of message. They immediately put down all the official duties in their hands and rushed out of the hall. That man was back. The Wu clan. Amu, who was dealing with official duties, suddenly stopped. In the next moment she raised her head and in the blink of an eye, she had already disappeared from the hall. Not long after, countless experts of the Wu clan soared into the sky, heading straight towards a certain direction. On the other side, in a certain courtyard, Yi Jiming put down the ancient book in her